welcome back to another episode, finally, of the Unfounded Podcast. My name is Christopher Turner, and I am your host, and today I have a very, very, very special episode for you guys. I've been talking for a long time now about bringing other people on the podcast, and I've started doing that with my mom, and as you met earlier, about a couple months ago, Shane. But now I'm doing it with my girlfriend and partner, Bethany, and I am so excited to introduce her right now. Bethany, say hi.
Hello.
We are excited to be here. It's been a long time coming. Like I said, me and Bethany, just to update you guys, have been together now just over 3.5 months, and we have had a bunch of adventures in that time, and I'm very excited to kind of dive into that with you here today. But also, we have a topic in mind. That topic, I think fittingly enough, is love. And I think specifically the type of love that I'm referring to is not the concept or the type of love that most people have, the conception of it that most people have. And I don't know if you'd agree with that, Bethany, but I think most people view love in a very shallow way, and it's not necessarily a demerit or mark against them or their perspective. It's more of a product of the world that we live in. Something like a continuation of the societal expectations and kind of after effects of the way that we operate and interact with each other, right? And so anyway, without getting on too much of a soapbox really quick, at the beginning of the podcast, like I tend to do, I just wanted to say thank you, listeners that have been out there listening up for these last 3.5 months. There's been a lot of support, and I'm really excited that people are out there and still enjoying the podcast. So thank you if you've been listening over the last 3.5 months when I haven't been producing content. I'm very excited to start it now, and also I'm very excited to kind of fill you in a little bit on what we've been working on, what we plan to do together, and kind of why there's been a little bit of a delay in that for you guys. So without any further ado, I think it's fitting to kind of start off the podcast the same way that we always started out, and that's with some quotes. And I asked Bethany earlier today, when I decided that maybe it'd be cool if she come on today, to look up a quote or two and possibly look at a book that she has been reading, but that we've been talking about sporadically over the last couple months. And it's a really interesting book called Big Love. So we're going to do a couple things in this episode. We're going to read a couple quotes, both the one that she found and the one that I found, and then we're going to go and maybe pull a couple pages out of, not rip them out, but look at a couple pages in Big Love and see what we can get from that. And then also I have these really, really, really cool cards that Bethany handed me right before the podcast, and they're called Our Moments Couples Cards. There's a couple different editions of them, I know. This one I think is just like the original one, right?
They have, like, if you look up there, there's the other two decks for the kids.
Okay, yeah. Connections and kids moments, right?
Right. So I think if they have two for the adult decks, it would be similar to that. But I've only seen so far the one that you're holding. Okay.
And so this is just a deck. It's almost kind of like an apples to apples deck or something like that, like a board game, but like almost like a tarot deck too, right? So it's like a fun game you can play with people, but also a game that you can use to get to know somebody a little deeper and kind of maybe ask the questions that you wouldn't want to ask initially, right? These cards specifically are focused on couples, so they're gonna if you use them correctly, kind of point out or maybe identify the aspects of your relationship that you need to focus on in some way, right? And so, but hopefully in a fun way, which is the point, right? Was why I bring up the game, right? Anyway, so we're going to maybe pull a couple of those towards the end of the episode and see if we can have some fun conversations off of the cards. So that's kind of the plan for today, guys. Thank you for bearing with me through that. And without further ado, like I said before, Bethany, do you want to read your quote first, or would you like me to start out?
I'm sure I can read mine.
Okay, cool. I'm curious. I'm very excited, actually.
So the one that I picked, I actually had seen right around the time we first started dating. Mm-hmm. And while not word for word have I been reminding this to myself, but the general idea of it has been something that I've been consistently trying to remind myself throughout our relationship, and not just ours, any relationship that I have, especially with the kids, but definitely in this one. Okay, so this one is by Carl Jung. It says, excuse me, it says, where love rules, there is no will to power. And where power predominates, love is lacking. The one is the shadow of the other.
Can you read that one more time?
Where love rules, there is no will to power. And where power predominates, love is lacking. The one is the shadow of the other.
Yeah. So do you want to go with your interpretation of it first? Do you want me to start out?
Well, I mean, I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory, but what I get from it basically is that I don't own anybody in my relationships. I can't control them. It is in a very more words, unconditional love is how I see it. Giving people choice, boundaries obviously are allowed, but giving people choice to be who and what they are and to think what they think and to feel what they feel without trying to intentionally influence your ideas or beliefs onto that person so that they are doing something in a time frame you expect or in the manner you expect, whichever. It's just kind of like letting go of that control together.
I agree, and that's what I was going to focus on too. When thinking about it more deeply, is the aspect of control that isn't actually said, I don't think, in it. Like, he doesn't actually speak of control specifically, but it really is the underlying narrative in that is something like, in order to love, you have to be able to release the desire to control the world around you. When he speaks of the will to power, he's referring to Nietzsche there, and he's kind of, I think, criticizing Nietzsche in some ways, because maybe, I'm not sure about that, but it sounds like it may be a slight criticism of Nietzsche, because Nietzsche talks about will to power and kind of the divinity of the individual in which that has will to power, the ability to kind of take an idea from their head and make it into reality, fashion it into reality, right? But that this incessant focus on that state, on this fashioning of reality, keeps you in the physical in a way that you're unable to kind of release control when you have to transition into what I would consider one of the more spiritual realms when we're talking about love and relationships. Right? That yes, it's a physical experience that you experience the world with other people, but that really the connection is based in the spiritual. It's based in kind of. Go ahead.
I think that the word will can be interchanged with desire, the desire to power, and the same with power being interchanged with control. At least that's how I interpreted it. So I don't know if
and I get that's a very good way. Yeah, that's a good interpretation too. That's really interesting. I've never thought of it that way, actually. But I see what you're saying. It's a much more reasonable assumption to make about will to power.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the will to power is like the will to manifest. But I see this particularly or specifically trying to point out that when somebody no longer has a desire or will to power over another individual, then they're acting out of love.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So I wonder if he was even referring to Nietzsche there.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Maybe it's just a play on words that I'm kind of highlighting that doesn't exist. Anyway, I tend to do, right? We've established this through our relationship. I like to focus on words a lot. Anyway, I like language, and I think there's a importance on focusing on language, as you just demonstrated, because there's a way in which people can misinterpret things, and like I may have just done, right? So that's one of the reasons why I tend to do that, actually. And I think it's important to think about, one of the reasons I made this podcast is to demonstrate philosophical thought. What we're doing right now, even though it's just a conversation, we're thinking about something, an idea that isn't something physical. It's not something tangible. So we're in that other realm, and so to speak. It's okay. We just had we dropped something on the floor there, guys, for the bang. Anyway, but I find that my conception of love has expanded, especially since meeting you, rapidly, and that what I've associated with that expansion of the understanding of true love, the way that people speak about it, has actually been a series of realizations about myself, which is what people don't like to realize, is that love is about you in a weird way, but the capital Y you, something like that. So it's like, I am you and you am I, this concept, right? That we are all one. We are all part of the universe or God or source or whatever you want to refer to it as. So that if, in order to love somebody else, I have to see the beauty in myself, the flaws in myself, the shadow in myself. I have to incorporate that in myself. And that's something that Carl Jung speaks of quite a bit, the shadow specifically.
Well, you have to understand yourself entirely, your light side, and your dark side. Experiencing your dark side allows you to know where your boundaries are with yourself, where your true morals are, where your values are.
Yeah.
And then to go from there, I kind of lost my train of thought.
You're
sorry.
fine. No, I agree with you though, because I just almost threw my. I'm holding a couple of shaman stones. They're really cool stones, but go ahead.
I remember. It's funny. When you do that, when you understand yourself, okay, reach enlightenment, whatever, it is essentially loving yourself. But as I think we discussed before, it is seeing like the God in yourself, the higher version of yourself. So when you can do that in yourself, I feel it makes it easier to take a look at another person, and kind of just like you can have a different interpretation of a word that you heard, you can have a different interpretation of the person you're viewing, up until you take a look and actually ask yourself, like, you know, is what I'm seeing actually what I'm seeing, or is it what I'm perceiving?
Yeah.
And then you kind of, I wouldn't say compare yourself to the other person, but put yourself in their shoes more easily, and then it allows you to like spread that love.
Empathize with them.
Yeah, you're acting from a place of compassion and love instead of fear or judgment.
It's exactly. I like the way you put it too. Is it you have to think about yourself as a perspective in some way. That a good way to think about it is, as I talked about it in one of the episodes, about thinking of yourself as almost like a viewfinder, like the universe's viewfinder, and each of us are a different perspective on the universe itself, kind of looking at itself. And so it's like, if you're looking at yourself and you're trying to figure out, if you're trying to play this game as if and pretend that you're separate from something that you're fundamentally a part of, then what you'll do is end up trying to delete yourself from it, because you'll fundamentally try to prove that right. So, and that's what I see happening at large in society. And one of the reasons ways that people do that is they refuse to accept other perspectives. So instead of trying to accept them and approach them in the way you said, is kind of almost a parallel way. And so you approach it slowly in a parallel way and try to integrate it into your perspective until you're kind of comfortable with what they're saying. Instead of doing that, we kind of turn perpendicular and cross them and try to cut off the idea in a weird way. And that kind of severs our tie with the universe itself at a fundamental, like, spiritual level. And in doing so, kind of isolates ourselves physically. And that's the kind of crossover that people don't understand, I think, fundamentally, is that in that way, you know, the magic that you see in the movies is real. It just manifests in your way in very different ways. You manifest your reality, but you do it in very tricky ways. You do it by cutting yourself off from what you are. And so it's something like the magic that the common magic that I think everybody has that they don't realize, not the kind of flame ball magic and like ice crystals and things like that, but like the magic that people have that they don't tap into is this. You have the ability to create your next day, and the way you can do that, manifest your next day, is simply by recognizing what you did that prior day in the other people around you. Right? What mistakes you made, what kind of side steps you did, and also in yourself. Like what did I miss? What did I say I was going to do? Like, what did I not hold myself to? In what ways did I let myself down? And so in that kind of combination of self-love and empathizing with other people, you're able to kind of see the closest resemblance of truth in the situation, which then you can carry forward into the next day and build on. Right? But if you don't do that process continuously, then what you do is kind of the opposite. You retract from that truth. And you build a narrative, the ego, a mask, and then you hide on that mask and depend on it. And the more you do that, the more you'll try to prove everybody else wrong. The universe itself trying to say, hey, I'm here. I want to hold you. I want to love you. And when we talk about love, I think that's the kind of total love that people are thinking about, is that you can connect with not only another person, but you can connect with the world and the universe in that way, in a totality, in a kind of beautiful release akin to death that you can only attain through kind of the will to power that I was speaking of, the release of the will to power I was talking about. If you go to the first kind of interpretation I had, I think both are true in a weird way. You know what I mean? That you can, once you relinquish that desire to have power, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Once you relinquish that desire to control the world around you, then you're able to love the world around you, because you notice that it's not something you need to change or control. And once you do that, you can do it with other people, you know?
My grandmother used to tell me all the time, and she'd probably tell everybody in the family. It's probably like her quote, like her phrase. It's her catchphrase, and it would piss me off, honestly. Especially when I would be complaining about somebody else, and she would say, "Bethany, you know, they're just doing the best they can for who they are." And I thought that was just a bunch of crap, like a bunch of nonsense, honestly. Until I started like studying hypnosis and then like researching different personality types. And then I thought it's not just who they are, but what level of not necessarily ascension, but understanding of themselves, you know, that applies to that as well. So when you focus on understanding yourself and accepting yourself, your perceived flaws, and you can take those perceived flaws and figure out how to use them to, you know, your benefit, then you can pinpoint the differences in yourself and other people. But I used to tell my friend Abby, same make different model, and then we would like joke about it and go same but different. That was our thing, same but different. And when you think about it that way, it's what makes us all the same is the fact that we're all different. That's like the one commonality we all have. And so then I can love myself knowing that I'm supposed to be different, and then love the other person knowing they're supposed to be different. And knowing that I've gone through different stages in my life and grown, that while this person, regardless of their age or ethnicity or level of intelligence, whether it's logical or emotional, they're at a different point in their life than me. And so I can kind of familiarize myself with the emotions that they're going through, their behaviors, the way that they're projecting themselves. And it allows you to like establish boundaries, but not in a way where you're just cutting them off or hating them or sending them all that negative energy. You can actually just be like, okay, I'm going to love you from a distance. I'm not going to have anything to do with you, but I still love you.
Yeah, hold space.
Yeah, hold space.
Yeah, I like that. And that's a conception, you know, that it's a weird conception actually, to hold space for somebody, but I think it really works when you think about it that way, that when you know, especially if you're somebody that has a hard time with identifying the people in your life that may be hurtful to you or harmful or anything like that, you know, there's a way in which you need to identify how to communicate in a way that would help everybody around you. Something like that. Not only you, but everybody around you. And actually, the simple way version of that is what would help you in the highest version of you, right? What do you actually need? Ask yourself that question emotionally and spiritually, like, what do you actually need? You know, and if you're honest with yourself, you realize you don't need that much. What you really need is truth. That's what you need. You know, honesty. Not from other people. You need it from yourself. You know what I mean? You don't need to hear honesty or truth from other people, because you'll see it when you're honest with yourself. You know what I mean? And so it's something like finding the courage to look at yourself with clear eyes and a full heart, right? Like, and loving yourself, and then allowing that love to transfer into the people around you. And that kind of space you create in that energy is the space in which you set your boundaries, is a space in which you define who will be active part of your life and who won't, right? And that's a process that's really hard. But also, one thing I wanted to key on, I wanted to comment on what you just said, but you reminded me, and kind of I wanted to carry the conversation forward, if you don't mind, into kind of how that relates to finding kind of your person, finding the person that you resonate with, right? And that's how I think it's the way I like to describe it, is something like when you're able to do what you were saying, ideally, when you're able to get to a point where you love yourself and realize what you truly need, then you're able to identify the people around you who need similar things, something like that. Or actually, better yet, people who will aid in the process of that continuing process of growth, right? Somebody that mirrors you is really
carries the same values.
Yes. Yeah. Carries the same values, but isn't that identical person, like you're saying. That there isn't somebody that you're going to find in the way I think that a lot of people think about it, this perfect match. You think an identical match, you think identical twin. Like, no, it's actually, and I think a lot of people realize that once they find it, you can find people that match you in like your opinions and all that kind of stuff. But what I think you'll end up realizing is something like you'll get bored because it's you, and then also you'll get angry because it's you, and all the parts that you don't like about yourself are going to come out in really nasty ways, and you'll try to attack them for it. You know, if you're not honest with yourself. And so there's ways in which what I've realized is the thing that you need to look for is the person, like you said, who has the same principles as you, who has the same moral structure as you, and who has the same vision as you for who they want to be. And that should, I think, ideally be in totality the same thing, your highest version self, but everybody's version of that is different. So it's like you need to find your fingerprint out there. You need to find the person that matches that in a very specific way. And so there's also a way in which people, they like to console people when they're going through breakups and when they're alone and that kind of stuff. I've been alone for a long time in my life. I didn't have a lot of relationships in my life. And I remember kind of this narrative that people will give you that who are in relationships while you're alone and you're lonely is kind of, there's plenty of fish in the sea. There's a lot of people out there for you. And while that may work to console people, the idea of it in the moment, I don't necessarily think it's true in the way people think about it. Because I think that there is one person out there for you. I think that there is one person out there for you that will open you up in a way that, yes, will be uncomfortable, but will also allow you to release in the way we were talking about earlier. And that's, anyway, I don't want to talk too much on that subject, but I'm curious on what you think about that.
So I think that because there's, doppelgangers in a soul version, that I would actually argue that there might be more than one person for each individual, but the odds of you crossing paths with them are probably much more slim.
Yeah.
And I pulled the values cards to kind of go over what you were talking about actually. And before I pull them, before I talk about them, one of the things that I tell people when they're looking for their person, okay, is after you've done the self work and you focus on the self love, and you understand yourself and you know what your values are, then it's basically like a frequency that you put out to the universe, or a conversation,
like a ding, I'm ready. Yeah.
Sort of, yeah. Definitely. But when I did it, it was like, okay. Initially, I thought that because I was like a gothy girl, I needed a really gothy, masculine guy who listened to death metal and all of that stuff. Yeah. And I tried that, and I realized that was not what I wanted. And then I tried, other approaches based off of, whether we had the same art or the same music, or it was very material things, and they were expressed. They were physical things. Yeah. That's a better way of putting that. But when I started exploring my values, I realized that was where the issue was, is that I hadn't understood what things meant to me and why. So then I asked the universe or spirit, whatever, for those things. I said, I want somebody who has similar values to me. Not in a way where they agree with all of the values, but they carry the same values, so that, I can still see that other perspective of them. And then, you put it out. Your brain actually physically moves, I assume, when you think, and sets out a frequency, and whoever is on that same frequency, will kind of answer that call. Yeah. You're a walkie-talkie, I'm a walkie-talkie. I tuned into channel 6 and you tuned into channel 6. So
it's interesting, but it also speaks of a certain type of well, it's interesting. What I was thinking about before that, as you were talking, what I was thinking about was something like people also think about finding their person through a series of kind of steps. So it's similar to the way that we go through school, and that this next step mentality that I think is a certain type of brainwashing that happens at a very early age. That's something like, okay, I get through 12th grade and I go through all these grades, so now I know there's something next. And usually it's, okay, college, right? And I have these other grade levels I can go through. But once you're through that, the next step is a little more mushy, and it's usually something like career and love.
Yeah, I was going to say career.
Yeah, and most people choose either career or love at that point. And a lot of people in modern day choose career because that's the point that's kind of pounded in you in college, right? And so what I find that a lot of people are doing is trading away this opportunity to explore themselves and their identity and the freedom that they can have in their 20s and kind of the first part of their life for kind of a career building mentality. In which they shut off the more heartfelt part of themselves and revert to a more logical brain, which is also conveniently more profitable to, corporations and organizations, because it's not very good to have people that are emotionally connected if you're doing things that are, one, sketchy, which a lot of corporations do, and two, if you want them to be reliable in the way that we talk about reliability, if you want them to wake up on time, if you want them to not have sick days, if you want them to kind of produce on a regular schedule, people can't feel bad. You know what I mean? They can't have down days where they're just emotionally off and they've gone through something hard. They need to be able to perform. So keep them logically based and don't make them think about it. problem is there's like ramifications from that, right? And that's mental illness, all these other things where people, those problems don't go away. And so then when you try to add on top of that, people go into this career, you know, they destroy themselves somewhat in kind of being so unbalanced that in the logical mind that they shut off their heartfelt kind of emotions and higher selves. And so the individual then kind of reverts backwards in a panic to where you try to find the next step again. It's like, fuck, that didn't work, so what do I do next? Well, love. So it's like, let me go find the next person I see. Universe, deliver it to me. And that's what I mean in like the ordering sense, is it is kind of an ordering, but it is also a ding, I'm ready. You know, you have to be at a certain, like, in order to find the person that people talk about themselves wanting to find, you can't also be running away from something else. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You can't use it as a crutch, as a safety net, which is, I think, how people use love modern day. And so what you end up having then is a lot of broken marriages, because people are getting into this assumption of lifelong, you know, whole total love, when what they're getting is something like the steps that you were describing, kind of the conception of love, the physical based idea of love that they need to go through in order to find the person that they will resonate with. And so what it brings me to then is this idea that we've talked about many times of, if we met each other, because just to kind of give you guys a little more history on me and Bethany, we've known each other since high school. We went to the same high school, and we worked together actually at my first job. I don't know if it was your first job, but
it was, yeah.
But there was this idea that if we wouldn't have, but we didn't really cross paths from that point on, basically like junior, sophomore year, right, of high school, maybe junior year of high school, I think. Not
like officially.
Yeah.
I knew who you were. I had seen you around.
Yeah, we were familiar with each other and all that. Yeah.
Friends of friends and stuff like that.
Exactly. We have a lot of acquaintances, which has been a really interesting experience as we've explored each other, is kind of how many people we know.
And we actually have been kind of like indirectly crossing paths throughout our life since elementary school. I
was going to say, there's a lot of complications because
without recognizing it.
We've been around each other in close proximity, basically all the time, except for maybe a 1 year, 1.5 year rogue period, right? Mm-hmm. And so, or maybe a couple year period. And so it's interesting how, yes, the person you're looking for may be closer to you than you actually think, but it's also something like you need to be clear-minded and clear-headed enough to be able to see them when they cross your path. And there was a thing we kept on talking about, is if we would have ran into each other before we had done a lot of the work on ourselves that we had to do prior to meeting you or each other, we would have torn each other apart.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We really would have tried to destroy each other, because there's these aspects of ourselves that would have become immediately insecure by the sight of the other person. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so there is this way you have to really be careful what you wish for, especially in the time frame you're conceiving it, right? Let go of the idea of time, truly. You know what I mean? And that's a rule that I don't say lightly, because I am the last person that wants to say it. I'm one of the most impatient people I know. And my constant guidance is temperance. But the guidance that I usually tend to have for other people is something like the same, because it's one that I've had to really learn and pound in my head. So that if you are finding yourself panicking or in this state of, where is my person? Why is it taking so long? Trust me, it's long is the wrong idea. Time is the wrong idea. It's not about time. It's about resonance.
Yeah, you're focusing on the wrong details.
Yeah. It's about being in the right space, in the right energy, in the right frequency to literally call that person in, as you described. And once that happens, then I think you can recognize in a very logical way, the utility of the people that you've had in your life before that, but also in a more emotional way, the way that they've led you to this person, right? That those people are always meant to be there, and there's a way in which the love that we're talking about extends to everybody that has come before to lead you to that person, because they're part of that journey, and you have to recognize that. It's a total love is really what it means. Everybody. It's not one person out because they still make me really mad. You know what I mean? It is everybody. It's simple in that way. Simple but difficult, and that's a weird idea that people don't like to accept. Is that there's a difference between ideas that are simple and ideas that are difficult, but difficulty doesn't mean complicated all the time. Like, science likes to speak in this way too. If it's difficult or hard to understand, it's complicated. No. If it's difficult to apply or understand, it might be simple. You might be overlooking it. Occam's razor. You know what I mean? Oftentimes I think that is the case, and oftentimes, without getting too far into that side of the things, the secular world, I think that's the mistake they're making. It's not that complicated. Anyway, speaking more on kind of actually getting to a point where we met each other, I think it's kind of funny to talk about like maybe the first night that we ran into each other again, and maybe, I don't know if you're comfortable with it, sharing how we came across each other, because it was a really unique experience. It was something that felt guided to me, felt kind of it was something that was meant to be in that way. And when people speak about meant to be, it makes me understand what they mean, but it also makes me understand why time isn't a part of that equation. You know what I mean?
Well, at the time, I had recently broken up with my ex, and I remember, I remember that I had started doing pick a card readings about twin flames and stuff, because I was under the impression that he was my twin flame, and I still
pick a card tarot readings, just for clarification, if anybody doesn't know.
Right, yeah. Like on YouTube, yeah, correct. Sorry. So I was under this impression that because we had, this connection, that was where we were. So I was doing these readings, and it didn't necessarily say that we weren't bonded or had like the twin flame connection, but it wasn't ever going in a direction where it seemed like, we were going to reconnect. Yeah. So I went a different route, and I looked for like who would I end up being with, you know, a different type of pick a card reading. And I felt really silly doing it, because I was like, how can there be like one person like defined that way? And I did actually 3 of them, and all 3 of them combined basically said that this person would come into my life when I least expected it. We would start off as friends, that I actually knew the person, that they would have military background, that there would be some other past things that are specific to you that I don't know if you're comfortable with me saying on here.
You're free to go. Yeah.
Addictions. And then the loved my cooking was a big thing that stood out.
Which I do. Oh my God.
And then the one that really, really caught my attention was the only child thing. Yeah. And while I had just ended that relationship with him, I was still open-minded. I was like, I still want to find my person, my partner. So if he's not the person, then I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to continue to look for my person. Yeah. And I remember talking to this other guy that I just met right around the same time, maybe like a month before. And he was doing the same thing. He was getting readings, and we were kind of trying to figure out if we were each other's person. But he wasn't. He was hitting a lot of the similar marks, but there was a couple that didn't seem that. 1, I'd never cooked for him. And 2, he wasn't an only child. And I remember asking him when he started going over these things, and I looked at him and I was like, are you an only child? And he was like, no. And I was like, oh, okay. And I really believed in this pick a card reading, and I think maybe that's what it was. Like, also, I believed in it, so I waited. I could have tried, but actually, what happened is, because we recognized that wasn't the person, we discussed that. We said, you know what, I like you, but you're not the person I'm looking for, and I don't want to risk that.
And thank God she did.
Yeah, but it was a mutual thing that we discussed, so it was nice to have like another person in my life who was going about something in the same way. He was mirroring me in the same way. Yeah, and so I was also training at the time. I had hired a personal trainer, and I don't know why, but you posted something on Facebook, or you stood out on my Facebook for some reason. Yeah. And your name is the same as my personal trainer. Yeah. So I thought how interesting it was that my personal trainer had dyed his hair brown and his beard brown, because he's blonde.
Oh, and he also looks a lot like me. That's the other freaky thing too. Yeah.
Yes, so they look a lot alike. It was very strange. So I clicked on the profile picture, and I'm like, why did Chris change his hair? And I went through it, and I was like, oh, this isn't the same Chris. And I didn't recognize you at the time. I didn't know you were the person that I went to school with and that I worked with. They
don't look the same.
No. Yeah. Well, with all the facial hair, especially. Yeah. I think if I had seen well, that's exactly what it was. I went through your photos up until like right after high school, and I saw that little butt chin of yours, and I was like, oh, there he is. I remember that. And without even thinking about it or questioning it, like weirdly, I just decided to message you and say like, hey, long time no talk. As if we had ever really talked a whole bunch. Like, we had a few conversations, I think. Well, you remember us having some conversations when we worked together, but at the time, that wasn't something I was thinking about it. Like, none of that had clicked in my head yet. So I messaged you, and then you proceeded to tell me about the podcast, and you mentioned something about connecting the idea of science and spirituality, and I was like, ding, 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 ding. I'm right on board with that. And then we started voice messaging each other on text, and we got mad at each other, and then we made friends, and then continued to hang out. And then you were the one who actually pointed out that you thought we were the ones for each other, because we were doing a reading. You were doing a reading for me, and I was still under the impression that it was about my ex.
Let me tell that little part for people just so they know. So before she goes any further, the kind of how I led into that was, as many of you know, I mean, you can go back and listen to the podcast. I documented mostly of what I was going through up until meeting Bethany. So if you go back to the most recent episodes, you can hear. But one of the things that I had been going through is something similar. Like I had come across somebody that I had been interested in for a long time that checked a lot of boxes for me in a similar way that you described, but that I had a hard time kind of understanding why I could never make that happen. And so it took me a long time to realize that I needed to let go of the conception of what I needed for myself. And when I did that, I actually was also looking at readings and doing, I don't think it was a pick a card reading, but I had a reading that popped up that came through and said something not like you had, where it was specific kind of things about the individual, but it described that I was going to meet somebody that mirrored me in a way that it was going to kind of jumpstart our lives, if for lack of a better way of putting it. And that this person was also going through her own situations at the time, and there was a necessity for us to align, not only in time, but energetically. And so this was actually a little bit before I met you. It was like maybe 2 or 3 months, I think, before I met you. And I remember there being a time period where I was looking. I was kind of, and the odd thing is too that Bethany had been popping up on my newsfeed for quite a while before that. And I remember being very interested in what she was talking about, because Bethany was talking about a lot of the same things that I was talking about, very similar subjects, very similar ideas. And I found it very interesting that she worked in the field that she worked in. She's a psychic medium, that she pulls tarot cards. She works in hypnosis. She does, a massage, all of these kind of holistic remedies to heal the soul and the body and the spirit, right? And so her popping out on my newsfeed in a similar way that she described me popping out, but not exactly the same way. And then her reaching out to me and me having almost instantaneously the kind of this realization that I didn't let her know right away, but that I had this idea, not that I was certain that maybe this could be it, because I had been looking, right? And what was so interesting about that is the first time that we met, we had like a scheduling kind of conflict or something like that. And I actually got a little upset on the phone, and we had like a conversation, and anyway, that went fine. We rescheduled, and I came over and we had a really nice night all the way up until like a certain point, and we ended up getting like surprisingly, not angry, I don't think is the best way to put it, but it was something like we both found our line in the sand very quickly at the same time, and had like something like a stare down, like almost if you can imagine like a old western at high noon, and someone like sitting there with 6 shooters like waiting to draw, like we were both like in that moment, in that energy. And one thing that I know it did for me, and I think you later shared did for you, was it made me realize that you have the same thing inside of you. You are the same thing, right? And that's what we were talking about earlier, that it's not just you check a box, you mirror. I see like a deep resonance that when you look in the person's eyes, when you look at them, even not in their eyes, when you look at the totality of them, not in a physical way, like in a deep way. If I was going to describe it, to be something like reading their aura or something like that. When you look at them, you fall into them. Something like that. You get lost in them. Time goes away. The delusion of time, the illusion of it is immediately revealed to you. And there's a resonance. And one thing I think I want to point out before you continue, babe, sorry, is that whenever we get close to each other, whenever I'm close to Bethany, whenever we're, hugging each other or holding each other, one thing I notice is that we start to sway, and that we sway in a very specific kind of frequency, emotion, and we don't actively do it. It's not something that we're either actively doing. It's something like the actual frequency of us manifests in a physical way when we're aligned properly. And I've noticed when we are fighting or arguing or something like that, that swaying goes away. I don't know if you've noticed that too. And so there's a way in which energy, wave form, up and down, it really is everything. And it will translate into your life in very subtle ways, and you have to look for it.
Well, you can see when we're physically connected. You can see through our physical actions when we're connected and disconnected.
Exactly right. So anyway, continue. I don't know if I went too far away from the thought that you were on, but
there's a couple things, but I think I still got them. I think so.
Okay.
I was going to say that moment when you looked at me, okay, you were upset with me with an idea. I had asked you to consider doing something, and you were not on board with that. And you turned to me, and it was so intense, and your not just your eyes got bigger, but your pupils got bigger.
Yeah.
And it was almost like I could actually see like the rage inside of you that you had been hiding.
Yeah.
Because the person that you had been showing, which isn't not real, but just the side that you were expressing, was much more gentle and, a lot more easy to talk to. But then when I pushed you, apparently, you turned to me and you looked at me with this intensity that I've actually only heard other people say that I've done to them, and I've never had anybody do to me. And that was the moment where I realized that the only way that I was going to be able to handle the situation was by giving the same intensity back, but not in a rageful. Yeah. And I remember I said, "I'm not your enemy." Was the response
did. That's
I
exactly
gave
what you said.
to
I'm not your enemy.
Yeah, but so that was when I recognized that I was sitting next to a mirror.
You know what? And to clarify, you're right. Because I'm seeing the memory a little clearer right now, and I was more in a rage than the way I described. It was something like, it took Bethany doing that. It took Bethany maintaining something like a balance, but also like exuding that confidence of not budging, right? That I'm still here and I can show you the same thing, but in a more restrained way that kind of stopped me in my tracks. And then it doesn't mean the anger went away or the rage went away. It meant I had to sit with it then. And so what ended up happening after that was not like everything became okay right away. It was something like the rest of the night, it was very hard. We weren't around each other for very much longer. It's like kind of like it wrapped up pretty quick. And I remember when I left that night thinking, well, that's about it. Like, I guess I fucked that one up. You know what I mean? And walking away, and then having a realization later as I got home, something like when I rethought about what you said and I wasn't in the immediate energy, that anger and that aggression and that passion, that certain type of passion, I realized that what you had said is true. And the reason that it had triggered it is because it had actually poked the thing that I needed to release. And so what I immediately did is, in as much of my own way as I could, I tried to think of how I could action what you had been talking about, and I did it. And in that specific scenario, it was just talking to somebody and kind of letting them know about, their situation a little more fully. But anyway, once I did that, I remember reaching back out to you and kind of letting you know that, hey, I've done what you said and it really helped. I can see what you were saying and that I felt the release. It's a really intense kind of experience when you have these things go on. But I remember that kind of, it took a second for us to come together, as I guess what we're getting to. It's not like you immediately find your person all the time and you're like, just like, I was like, for instance, I was looking at quotes and there was one by Bob Marley and it was really beautiful, but it was way too focused on this idea of like, once you find them, it's roses and daisies. And it's like, no, that's not really true. It's like, yes, that can be true, maybe in a certain type of love, but it's also not in the way the total love that we're thinking about. The total love is something like a lot of suffering too. You have to be able to recognize that you are the thing that hurts yourself, and people will show you that when you love them. You know what I mean? If you're honest with yourself and you empathize with them and you do everything you're supposed to do in a relationship, trust them.
We're being, well, in a relationship, yeah. We're being, I think, more specific to like a romantic relationship. But at that time, when we were in that heated moment, I was actually asking you to reconnect with somebody.
Yeah.
And I was telling you that you needed to come from a place of love.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
Which is what made me mad.
Yeah, that's what pissed you off. You didn't want to love this person. And I said, I don't mean like in love. Yeah. And you said, yeah, because I'm already in love with somebody else.
Yeah,
and
that's
I remember
exactly what I said. Yeah.
That's when I had told myself, okay, he's not my person.
Yeah.
That's where I established that boundary. I said, he's not my person.
So see how I almost screwed myself.
I was taken back by that, yeah.
How the anger will come out and try to sabotage you.
808.
808. Let's read about that real quick. We'll look it up. I actually looked up another angel number earlier, 755, and that was something like, it's the right time to let love in.
That's when I dropped the stone. I looked at the clock at 755 and I was going to say something, but I dropped the stone. I was like, oh, I guess I'm not going to say it.
So as many of you know, we've gone over this before, but angel numbers are kind of numbers that you'll see in the world, especially once you start looking. All you have to really do is start looking. It's not that complicated, but the clocks, anything electronic around you, or not even electronic, the world around you there's other languages there that you can see if you want to, if you wish to.
And my my quote, when I had looked it up earlier, it was 515. So we have 515 as an angel number that I wanted to look up as well.
515. Okay.
515.
We'll look that up too. But go ahead, babe. Sorry.
Oh, it was just that, just in relation to the quote.
Okay, so let's go and read about angel number 808. The number 808 is shown to help you trust, let go, and have faith that everything happening is not just occurring as it is meant to, but that it is also happening for the highest good of all those involved. The highest good of all those involved, that's what we're talking about. And that, oddly enough, is what's best for you, truly.
That's actually what we were just talking about right before we came on here. We were talking about the highest, right when we did our little intent prayer.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we're talking about the highest good.
The highest good.
The other thing to consider, though, is the topic is love. So 808, the angel number 808 and love would be more specific.
Do you want to kind of explain to people in a little more depth what numerology is and kind of so they understand? Or if anybody's curious, I don't know if you want to.
There's different ways to do numerology, but essentially it's just taking numbers that come from, either a chart, like the Chaldean numerology chart. They take a letter and it's associated with a number.
Okay.
You could also do like your birthday, where it's already numbers itself, and you add them all together. It's one version. You add them all together, and like let's say we're doing your life path number. You add all those numbers together, and let's say you got like 32. Then you would add the 3 and the 2 to get a single number. Ideally, that's what you want, unless it's a doubled number like 11, 22, 33. Then they're considered repeating master numbers. But you can still, to get additional information, add those two numbers. So like let's say you got 33, which is the master. It's the master creator. It's the creator essentially. And then you add 3 and 3, it's 6, which is domestic love. Then you would get 2 more pieces of information. So based off of whatever your question was, you would know that this has to do with being able to create something, and it would be related to domestic love. So it could be, creating a schedule for your child. Is something,
however it relates or resonates to you.
To whatever whatever you're going through at that moment. So angel numbers are usually, aside from the numerology, angel numbers are usually like a repetition of numbers. Not always. You can still look up an angel number. Like let's say you're looking at the clock and it says 329. So you don't, or not 329. Let's say it says 302 instead of 303. You can still look up 302 and get an angel number, and then add it to get together and get another number.
More specific.
Yeah.
There's a really interesting way in which, the way at least it manifested for me is once I kind of, oddly enough, when I was driving to Phoenix, when Bethany messaged me initially, I was, I think, driving to Phoenix for Christmas time this last December. And on that drive was the first time that I remember actually having a lot of these things happen to me, like really intensely, where everywhere I looked, and I'm not joking, like when I'm driving there, every road sign I looked at, when I glanced up, would have a repeating number. When I would look down at my dash, when I looked down at my gauge clusters, it was just so repetitive that I couldn't deny it. And once that happened, it was something like immediately after Bethany enunciated numerology to me, kind of in the way you just heard, so that it connected the dot that I was already seeing. Right. And so what I think is important for people is if you are looking for guidance, a lot of times the guidance is right around you. It really is. It's still around you. It's not like you have to earn it or something like that. The energies of the universe are constant. Everything is connected, so that when you are looking for an answer, it is literally right there. It's the reason you're looking for it is because it's around you. You know what I mean? But you may not be looking in the right place. And numerology is one of the places you can look. Right. But anyway, I wanted to read 515 for you real quick. 515 angel number. Angel number 515 is a sign that wonderful new opportunities and fresh starts are entering your life that will bring positive changes. Your angels ask that you maintain a positive attitude and mindset about these changes and trust that they are for your highest good and will enhance and enrich your life.
Try that with the word love afterwards, so it's more specific to the relationship, since the quote was about love. Pretty please.
So for angel number 515, love, it says, the meaning of number 515 in love is bright and positive. And you should be very excited when you start seeing this angel number. This is very similar to angel number 433. If you're single, it signifies the need to make important changes in your life so that love will come to you. And what were we just talking about? Right? So that if you are one of those people that are listening right now and you feel like that description describes you, you're not alone. Me and Bethany have both been in that place. Not only us, every other person in the world that's ever existed has been in that place. Literally. So there's no more proper way to say it than you're not alone. But that if you are looking for the love that we're describing, what you need to do is look inward. Look at yourself. What can you do and what can you control truly? And what you'll realize, what you control is literally up and down, left or right, yes or no. That's it.
Your own actions.
That's it. It's so simple. That's what I mean. It's simple but difficult to employ in your life, because we have these other parts of ourselves. We have the animal inside of us that wants to tear us apart in some ways. We have the logical mind that kind of wants to think our way into certain type of security that also imprisons us. You know what I mean? We have the emotional part of ourselves that is attached to that animal thing. That is what will rip us apart if we're not careful. You know what I mean? So it's this delicate balance internally. And I think one of the ways that you can help balance yourself, especially if you're looking in the world, is stop doing that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Simple as that. Stop doing that. Look at yourself. You know. Anyway.
So, going back to when we met, I'm gonna try to put this in an order that goes back to another thing I wanted to say. It's okay.
I tend to pull things off of you know.
That's okay.
Everybody
I'll help bring
knows.
It back for you.
Thank you. It's needed.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about something you were talking about earlier, which was kind of like the opposite end of what you said about when a person is looking for love and then they kind of give up, or they I don't remember how you worded it, but you started talking about how they get involved in their career, and I said, yeah, career. I was thinking that. Well, I was actually thinking something similar, but a lot like different.
Okay.
And so pause that for just a second and go back to when we were talking about when you were the one who started suggesting that we were each other's person. Mm-hmm. Okay, we had pulled some angel cards, and I remember after you had suggested that, when I was alone, I had pulled cards myself, and I had pulled one for each of the three people that I was considering: the ex, the friend, and you. Yeah. And I remember one was like creativity, the other one was beauty, and then yours and mine was true love. And we had, described ourselves kind of like in a joking way as an angel and a mermaid. And the card itself had an angel and a mermaid hugging each other, talking about falling in love with each other's souls. So when we had started considering, dating, I guess we hadn't made an official relationship, but we were exploring that, I guess. Yeah. We had also talked about not losing our identity.
Yes.
In our relationship. So what I was getting back to is when a person is looking for love, I think sometimes, if not most of the time, one of the things that they think that they need from the partner is career, is that person needs to be in a similar career.
Stability.
So, well, career, yes, that way, but also like, where they're losing their identity. I need to have somebody who, even if it's not in the same field, it has the same work ethics, all of that stuff. And I think that that is true to an extent, but when you start making your relationship about how well you guys work together, not like compatibility in everyday life, but also like work together. Yeah. For example, I don't want to call any names, but I have somebody very specific to me, a family member. Yeah. Who, when he got into this relationship, he and his partner, they worked at every restaurant together. Mm-hmm. They always did, and it caused a lot. And they actually, to try to respect the business, didn't mention that they were in a relationship. Some of the people knew who were closer to them, but it caused a lot of problems because they were trying to incorporate their business and personal life, but then also separate it because they thought they were protecting their identity, I guess. Yeah. But what happened is they witnessed a lot of things where people didn't know that they had to establish boundaries between them. So there was a lot of jealousy, there was a lot of controlling, there was a lot of manipulation, there was a lot of fighting. And honestly, they went from job to job together. And not everybody will go working at the same company or, business together, but they may start trying to do something along the same lines. Yeah. And they kind of lose themselves in that because they think that the only way that they're going to be able to experience love is if, a doctor marries a doctor or an almost doctor, whatever that is.
Yeah. No, exactly. I think it's a really good point because it's easy to get, it speaks of kind of the way that people conceptualize themselves. And odd thought I had while you were saying that was the movie Inception. It is kind of a weird way if you want to think about I think you were describing the ego there in a certain way, but you're describing the way that people think about themselves, right? And I think there's a weird way in which, in order to view yourself properly, the ego game is something like an inception game. It's something like when you start to build an identity, and we do this at a very young age. Everybody does this. We start to build an identity that's other than the one that is truly you on top of yourself. It's literally a layer. It's literally a mask that's outside of you. And so when you start to do that, it starts to become something that the larger it becomes, the larger you hold on to it, the more it will not resonate with what you are truly inside. And you'll have these weird kind of emotions pop out, anger, resentment, all of these things internally directed if you're honest with yourself, not at other people. They'll manifest at other people, but really about you. And what I've noticed is that when people are in that state, when they're in the ego, like I've been, like you've been, I'm sure, everybody has, like I said, I'm not trying to be on a pedestal here talking down in any way. I'm speaking of kind of the way in which it manifests, that you have to be able to pull yourself out of that dream. Is that if you play that dream for long enough, which we all have, everybody in the modern world has, you are now in that dream permanently. You're stuck there. The only way you realize you're in the dream is to have something like the little totem that he has, right? The little spindle. I don't know if you've seen Inception, but he has this little spindle that he'll keep with himself, and it lets him know he's in a dream. He'll spin it, and if it continually spins, he knows it's not real. Something like that to orient yourself. And how do you orient yourself? Well, you look at yourself. You know what I mean? Like, look at something that you trust, that you know, that you had with you forever. And what is that? Well, it's what you love. You know what I mean? What do you like to do? What do you truly enjoy? What puts a smile on your face and you don't think about smiling? What makes you warm inside? You know what I mean? What makes you tingle? Like, those kind of things are the things that you need to focus on. And you don't even need to have a very fine definition, but once you find even a little kernel of that, you'll notice it's actually a perspective shift. It's a physical thing. You'll notice it'll pull you out of that inception kind of mask. And when that happens, it's a certain type of euphoria you'll experience, a certain type of weight being lifted off. The first time that happened to me, I remember experiencing something like I felt like I was floating. Literally. I felt like the weight I had been carrying of that mask that I had wore for, at that time, I think 29 years or 28 years, literally lifted off of me not in moment, but something like a moment in time. And as I walked, I remember looking and everything was brighter. The colors were more vivid. The animals seemed to be in tune with me in a way that I didn't recognize before. And as I walked, I seemed to glide. I didn't seem to have effort in my steps. I wasn't zapped of energy. I was refilled. And there's a weird way in which once you return from the dream, you realize, similar to sleeping too long, you're dazed, you've lost your address. You know what I mean? And the only way to kind of feel whole again, to fill that void that many people describe inside, is to kind of spin the totem. You know what I mean? Pull yourself out of the dream, as scary as it will be. To realize that you're dreaming. That's why you like the movie The Matrix. You know what I mean? That's why you like all these movies that's why VR is so compelling, I think, in a certain way, is because we're all inceptioning ourselves already, but it's like, okay, let's go a layer deeper. You know what I mean?
It seems more private. You get to explore things that you may not want to share with other people and see what it's like. It's actually doing shadow work. Yeah. And then being able to visually visually see it in a more in-depth way.
Another good thing to, I think, define a little better for people is shadow work. Yeah. What is it? And the shadow, I think a really good way to start this is actually with the person that we started with on the podcast today, Carl Jung. Yeah. Carl Jung was a psychotherapist, but also a philosopher of sorts, right? And he lived, I believe, in around Freud's time. He was a contemporary of Freud. He was kind of a friend, but also kind of a frenemy, right? They had kind of debates on ideas, and one of the things that Jung identified in his work was this idea of the shadow specifically, and the shadow being literally like the concept of the physical shadow. It's the void that's created from the things you hold on to. Something like that. It's like it's where the light can't shine.
It's the part of you turn away from.
Yes. It's the thing that you don't want to see. It's the dragon. You know what I mean? It's the thing you're scared of every time, every single damn time. And that's why every movie that you love, that you can't take your eyes off of, is the same damn story every time. It's why people always ask, why is there no new stories? Why is there nothing new coming out? Because you don't need a new story. Those stories are being created for you in a weird way, and me. You know what I mean? For us. And we're not learning those lessons. That's the way to interpret it, I think. Anyway.
This isn't like right along that, but going back to some of the things we were talking about, like self-expression and stuff like that. In the same way that I encourage my son to express himself. First of all, he's a little badass and he's manly in many ways, even for a little boy, right?
Oh yeah.
But he tends to like some more quote unquote feminine things, like the color pink and purple, or he'll watch the show My Little Pony. Yeah. And even his older brother will kind of taunt him and say, those are girly things. And I remember one day, he put on a crown, he put on a tiara. We were at a party, and it wasn't like a princess tiara. It was like just an event thing, you know, like a party hat kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he was like running around, look at me with my crown, you know, being silly. And this other boy was making fun of him for having this tiara on. And I turned to him and I said, you know, you're just upset that your parents won't allow you to express yourself in the way you want to. They won't allow you to like the things that you want to like. So you're turning around and bullying him. And I said, I'm not going to let you do that. And he looked at me and he didn't argue with me, but I can see the look in his eyes where he's like, yeah, you're right. Like, if I had tried to do that, one of my parents probably would have told me to knock it off. And it probably made him realize that wasn't really what he wanted.
Yeah.
So I noticed, you know, in you, I've been encouraging not for you to necessarily go and like girly things, but if you tell me that you're interested in something that you think or society says is not as manly, I won't turn around and tell you, no, you can't do it. I'll tell you, try it and see if you like it. If you don't like it, don't do it again. Yeah. Otherwise, continue to do it, because that's what, you know, makes you feel like makes you feel confident. And
you have to listen to your truth, whatever it is. And that's a scary journey for people, right? It really is. But there's an aspect, like you were talking about, of some common ones that I think people get tripped up on in modern day, you know, and it's something I think, especially just because I have a male perspective, I feel like I can speak to it to this degree, but I think that a lot of men struggle with this more feminine, the idea for the feminine inside of themselves. You know what I mean? There's not just men. This is a very hot topic in society at large right now, right? There's with transgenderism, all of these kind of things coming up at large in society. I think it speaks of a deeper kind of confusion. Not that I'm not trying to speak ill of anybody in this, but a deeper confusion at a spiritual level with what the masculine and feminine is, and a certain type of villainization of the opposite. So that the only way that you really are able to discover yourself is through incorporating the shadow, as we were just talking about. But often enough, a lot of what makes up your shadow is going to be whatever conception you've turned away from. If you think that what you are is just a man because you have a body that's a man, you're thinking about it wrong. I promise you that. And it's the same thing for women. It's the same thing for anybody that is living this human experience. Do you have a conception of who you are that includes some kind of box you've placed yourself in? It's wrong. I promise you. And the only way you find out what's right is to let go, to think outside the box. You know what I mean? What do they describe true genius being in kind of elementary school? I remember they give these tests when you're in like 3rd and 4th grade, 5th grade sometimes, but I remember one of my math teachers gave us this test one time, and it was something like the ability to identify novel thinking, novel methods of thought and thinking outside the box. And they had literally like a diagram where you had to try to, it was connect dots in a certain way. And, the only way to do it was to literally go outside the lines, to disobey the rules. Right. And that is the novel thought we described. But in order to do that, you have to be willing to kind of see that the rules aren't real. And including the ones that you've made for yourselves. That's what I mean by boxes. Those aren't real. None of them. Not any of them. The only thing that is real is kind of the unadulterated you, the moment. That's the only thing that's happening, as the Buddhists would call it. That if you're able to meditate or put yourself in a frame of mind in which you clear your mind in the way that a lot of people describe it, what you'll notice is that there's this flow, this stream, there's this happening. You're not actively engaging with it in the way that you think you are. You are an active participant in it, but you're not in control of it in the way you think you are. And so once you realize that, you realize that everything else that stems after that is something you're creating, is your ego. And in a certain way, there's no way to escape that. That's what I mean by there's no judgment when talking about the ego, when talking about people being in certain positions or perspectives. It's because we are all constantly in that. I am in my ego right now as I speak. How? I don't know. I really wish I did. because then I'd be able to get out of it. The only way I know how to get out of that is what I just described. Meditate. Find something that you love. Find something that makes you tingle. That'll get you out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the only way to open yourself up to that is to let go. Right. And one of the ways that, the ways that you can express that, I think, like I was getting to with the masculine, is that there's a lot of things that you were describing, like with, your son, with, expressing himself, maybe with a tiara or whatever it is. Right. One of the ways that I've been exploring that myself is in painting my nails. Right. And it's an odd experience because the first time I did that, I was kind of not knowing why I was doing it. It was more of a fun thing. It was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I'll try it. I remember we were over, I think, at your grandfather's house, and we were just hanging out, and you were painting your nails, and I was kind of like, can I paint my nails? Out of nowhere. Which is an odd thing because, it's not something I've ever done before, but something in that moment I felt free to ask and do. And once I did, I realized, actually, it did a lot for me. It helped me incorporate a certain idea, the idea of the feminine inside of myself. Once I expressed it physically, it felt like it was real then. That I was able to kind of allow the nurturer inside of myself, the self-love that I had been denying myself in, right? I was allowed to kind of view myself as something that can be beautiful in that way, in the way that we think about females being beautiful. It's not a sin for a male to try to wear something flashy, to wear something with a design on it, to like maybe even a shirt that is designed for a female, but the print is something that you like, to have a water jug that has colors on it. You know what I mean? It's like all of these really, really, really goofy ways, when you really look at it, that we restrict ourselves, limit ourselves, imprison ourselves as men. And I really, as one, implore any men out there listening to this not to go and paint your nails like I'm doing, but to explore whatever aspect of yourself you're denying yourself, because I guarantee you, once you do that, you'll realize that you are starving for it. You are starving. You're thirsty. You need to love yourself in the way that you're denying. Anyway, go ahead.
And to consider why you want to explore, the intent behind it. So while I'm unsure if whether or not you figured out the intent behind it entirely for you,
I don't know if I have either. Yeah.
I didn't used to paint my nails. I actually had girlfriends who get mad at me and tell me it was gross because I wouldn't paint my nails. And I was like, well, I'm an artist. I weightlift. I do all these things. It would be silly. There was no purpose for it for me. But when I was actually, after I started studying hypnosis and life coaching, that I started kind of diving into color therapy. And I realized, oh, well, just like I can pick a shirt or, a necklace or something with a certain color to help kind of trigger an emotion or help balance something out in me, I can do that with my nails. And my hands are the things I look at the most. They're always in front of me. So I see it all the time. And I think that it helps, in the same way that a symbol would kind of trigger either an emotional balance of sorts. A
cross you wear around your neck, or a ring that you have when you're married, it reminds you of whatever you're in, whatever energy you're in. And that's exactly right. And that's what I was going to try to get to is what I noticed is that the reason that I paint them now is actually to represent the energy that I'm in currently, to remind me that there's actually a dualistic nature to me all the time, and that I've associated the sides of myself, the right and the left, with the masculine and the feminine, with colors that associate with those feelings, those energies, and with kind of a mixture of those two things, to always remember that I need to maintain a balance between these sides of myself, right? And that's, in an odd way, why it's confusing to look at the aspect of painting your nails or whatever this is as a feminine thing entirely, because it's something that actually will define and connect you with your masculine, your true masculine, more so than you've ever realized. Not only that, but
because it's associated with identity.
Yes, it is your identity showing forth more truly. And it reminds me of the birds we were watching. That we have this conception, if you want to prove it for yourself, if you don't believe us that this is a wall we've built for ourselves, one way we express it, go watch this documentary on Netflix. It's called something like Dancing Birds or something like that. Anyway, it documents all of these different birds and the ways in which they try to mate. And every single one of those birds, the males are the ones that are donned with really bright, vibrant colors, patterns, the ones that spend almost their entire life learning really intricate dance moves, things that are usually associated with feminine qualities in the human being. And so there's ways in which you can look into the animal kingdom and recognize that the boxes we make are not real.
I encourage anybody who does paint their nails or paints anything at all, like maybe you just painted your walls, in your house, to research the spiritual meaning or metaphysical meaning of that color that you chose, or even look up what chakra it's associated with, because more than likely, whatever you have painted on your hands or your walls is going to resonate with something you're going through, probably emotionally. Less likely to be intellect, like in a logical sense, but probably more in an emotional way.
Yeah. No, exactly. And you'll notice those colors will pop out to you too as you go around in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you'll be attracted to those colors. You'll feel more balanced when you wear those colors, things like that. It'll help you kind of release if you're going through something, you know, unblock your chakras and be able to, whatever it is, speak more clearly, think more clearly, see more clearly, however it manifests.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So when you asked me, you know, if you could paint your nails.
Yeah.
And I said yes. I was thinking about how that could actually allow you to explore some of your own values and even some of your own morals.
Yeah.
And that kind of like gets back to the values cards, which I don't know how much time we have left, but
as much as we need. Yeah.
I'd like to go over some of them. So do you want to?
That's what I was saying anyways for actually. Yeah.
Do you want to read some of them yourself? Like I can read the ones where they're mutual between us and you can read the ones. So or do you want me to read all of them?
I think let's let me read mine. You read yours, and we'll read the ones that are mutual. Is that work?
So I pulled 3 and 3, and the way that it worked, I pulled randomly 3 value cards that represented values that you and I not only both have but see equally.
Yeah.
And then I pulled 3 other cards of values that we both have but we may not actually see equally. Okay. So there's a difference in which goes back to the unconditional love thing and the understanding the difference in the other person. And you know, I don't necessarily need my person or my child or my parent to agree with me, but I want them in hopes to understand me and vice versa, me to understand them.
You're not looking for an identical match.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what you're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think it would be cool if we split them up. You read 3 of them and I read 3 of them, however you want to do it.
Okay.
Just kind of hand them randomly, I guess, whichever one is.
Okay. Well, I didn't. I'm going to have you start actually. Okay.
Okay.
Because I did actually read them and I think it would be better for you to start this since I did read them already.
Okay.
And then before you read them, I'll just, on the back of this card, it gives like a definition of what values are. So people who don't really understand what values are can have a better understanding.
So you want me to read that first?
You can read it. And then these are your cards. We don't need to read the stuff on the back, just what's up front. These cards are the ones that we do have in common that we see eye to eye on.
Okay, so for those of you that are confused in any way, what we did is we pulled 3 cards. These are value cards. They have values written on them. Similar to tarot cards or oracle cards if you've had those, except instead of having a picture or depiction or just kind of like a certain idea or stage in the awakening process, it has a value on it and then kind of a description on the back. Right? No? Well,
what's on the back is like a question for the person to consider, but it doesn't really apply to what we're doing here. So we'll just stick with the front.
We'll just stick with the front. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. But before I do that, I'm going to read this what are values so that we have a better understanding. We're all on the same page. What are values? Your values are what you identify as guiding principles in your life. People often witness their values as they experience success and struggle, peaks and valleys. Success and struggle are good indicators of when your motivations are being fulfilled or not. These cards will help you identify the values that are guiding principles in your life. Your moments of success and struggle may give you some clues about what truly motivates you. The values presented in this deck have some simple definitions that bring meaning and clarity to these terms. However, you ultimately define what these words mean to you. Okay, and for any of you that are wondering, I will put a link to these resources in the description so that you can kind of go and look at them. I'll try to find somewhere that you could purchase them if we can find them that way. Anyway, so these are the ones that we have in common, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start this. So for the ones that we have in common, the first one that we have in common is true friendship. Benevolence is another word that's on that card. What's
it's
that
like the category that it's in. So true friendship is in the category of benevolence.
Okay.
In one of the other cards, it has like a chart that shows all the colors and everything.
So we'll just stick to the first one.
Right.
So we have true friendship. The second one is creativity. And third one is intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So what I see in this is something like, in a weird way, the way I'm seeing it is I'm lining them up and I see the first one, the first card is true friendship, and then under that I see creativity and intelligence, and it's something like true friendship unlocking creativity and intelligence, something like believing in those things, in the idea of truth itself, being the thing that we both believe in a certain way, which is the thing that unlocks creativity and intelligence in the other being, in the other person, which is why we value them so highly. Because this is the process that we've been repeating, I feel like, over the last couple months, is this process of as I learn, you learn, and vice versa, right? And this sparking creativity and intelligence ideas like the ones you are listening to right now, you know what I mean? This plethora of ideas, actually, limitless supply that has been generated. And so I see also us believing in foundations. That in order to have true love, you have to build a foundation, true friendship, something stable for it to stand on. And so that in order to do that, you have to know who the person is. You have to not rip the mask off. You have to take your own mask off in front of the people and be willing for them to see you for who you truly are, and be willing and ready for them to run away if that happens, and for you to recognize what that means if they do, that they're not your person. Right. And so anyway, go ahead.
No, okay. I think I was going to say, I think that a person's emotional intelligence and logical intelligence, understanding their level of them, kind of gives a person some insight on not just how creative they can be applying all the cards in an order, but also what level of loyalty they can provide, which is how I see true friendship. And I don't mean loyal as in like I've got your back. So like if you stole from a store and somebody asks if you stole, I'm going to say no, you didn't steal. That's not a true friend to me. A true friend's actually somebody who would be like, dude, you shouldn't have done that. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to go snitch on you maybe, but I'm definitely not going to lie for you.
True friendship.
Don't bring me in the middle of this ever again. Establishing boundaries, telling a person, calling them out on their shadow. Yeah, exactly. And be willing
but
to loving them anyways.
Exactly. Being willing to see it and not turning away.
Yeah, you messed up and I don't like this and I hope that, you learn from this, don't do it again. But I'm not going to force a consequence or a punishment on you that's not of my my right, I guess, to enforce on you.
Exactly, because you're placing yourself in a judgment position when we do that. And that's never proper because we are all the same thing. So it's a certain ego spiral you'll place yourself in when you end up in a really nasty spot you don't want to go. Promise you that. It always ends in the same spot. It's usually something like if you carry it out long enough, it's just like murder, suicide, or genocide, one of the three.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I see a person's creativity as their like a form of emotional intelligence too. It's a way you can express yourself. So it's an emotional intelligence, it's an understanding.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a way to manifest the emotion into a physical reality. Yeah.
And then I see true friendship also as like a form of true love. Because while I love you, I love my brother, I love my best friend, but what I wasn't the only thing that caused me to fall for you, but as my reading had said, I wouldn't see it coming. I wouldn't know that we would start off as friends. And I think that was very important for us to do, is to connect with each other, because my guard was down. I wasn't trying to impress you. You weren't, at least I don't think you were trying to impress me.
No, not in the way
consciously.
No, not consciously. I had aspects of my ego that were still present, I think, that we've identified, but it wasn't something that I was ever intending to do. It was actually the opposite, that once I met you, it was something like it put an emphasis on me not being the thing that messed it up.
You did, yeah.
I kept on saying that I don't want to mess this up, because there was a gravity to meeting Bethany. Like there's a certain awe that I was in when I first met her. And I think that caused me, if you're not careful, I think this happens to a lot of people, that when you meet your person, if you're not careful, you'll run away from them right away, because they are terrifying in a certain degree, because they demand a certain level of truth because of that foundation that's necessary and required to hold you two together throughout the hardships of life. You have to be honest in a way that you've never been before.
It's true vulnerability.
It's true vulnerability. And that terrifies people. It is the most terrifying thing people can experience, I think, is that kind of vulnerability, because it's the ego death. It is death. It's just not the kind of death we like to think about. And so it really is an odd thing that in order to embrace love, you have to embrace death. And this is part of the shadow incorporation we've been speaking about earlier, is that you have to de-villainize the things in your life, including the conception of good and evil you have. I want to move on to my quote real quick if I can, because it's speaking of this, and it's actually Nietzsche, which is funny that popped out of your quote. That's the interpretation I had, but the quote I had was short and sweet. It's by Friedrich Nietzsche. And it goes, Whatever is done for love always occurs beyond good and evil. It says, whatever is done for love always occurs beyond good and evil. And I think what I get from that message is something like what I was just describing, that you have to relinquish the idea of good and evil from yourself. Even that is a compartmentalization in the way that I was describing your conception of the man or the woman. It is something that doesn't exist. There is no good or evil. There is only up and down, left and right, light and dark. It's not a value equation. They're both necessary. And in the ways that a lot of religions talk about deleting something from it, classifying things as evil, and thus deleting them from the world, is not a good thing to do in yourself, because it is the thing that will create the monster you're terrified of. If you think that the monsters exist in that way, if you villainize half of the universe, guess what it creates? You know what I mean? It's like, think about the movies. You know, when
the Joker
watched,
was what I started thinking about. The most recent one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why is everybody literally in anarchy at the end worshiping him as like a king or a god? Because he's the mirror. He's what they've been manifesting and actually what they want. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's a weird way in which we trick ourselves, because we think that we can delete evil, and so we'll place ourselves on the end of good all the way until we commit evil.
Well, I wanted to ask,
we're playing that game.
Is the Joker evil? Is he evil? I mean, in that film,
Not in the way that people
particularly.
think about it.
Yeah,
no.
exactly. Like, what caused him to move on? And that's a more
he wasn't
extreme.
Born evil. No.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a more extreme version of what I was thinking. I was thinking something more along the lines of, like, you know, you're at the park and you see somebody beat another person up. Like, is that person evil? Well, yeah, I would say they're not fun. They're probably
they're not very fun, probably. I would invite them to a party.
They're not their best energy. I wouldn't want to hang out with them, yes. But I wouldn't necessarily assume...
to say that to them. You're not the best energy. I don't want to hang out with you.
But what I mean is, I wouldn't necessarily assume that just because somebody did a quote-unquote bad act, that necessarily makes them evil, because we don't know what pushed the person that far. Let's say this person was beating this other person up because this person tried to, like, you know, maybe make a move on his little sister who's, like, you know, 6 years old or something, and he's like, you know, he's defending her. I still don't think you should go just beating him up. There's other ways you can get law enforcement and stuff involved, obviously, but that doesn't mean that he's evil.
No, exactly.
You have to understand the intent behind each person's actions, and then try at least to believe that every person can still at least think that they're coming from a place of love. But I think people confuse love with like justice or revenge. Is revenge the word I'm looking for? Yeah. No, it's not revenge. It's like when you honor somebody's death by getting revenge. There's a word for it.
It's you make them a.
Is it revenge?
Not by revenge, but you can. I think I know what you're talking about. It's something like a martyr.
Yeah, like getting justice. Like you think you're getting justice.
Oh yes, but I know what you're talking about. It's like you're getting your retribution for kind of an eye for an eye idea, I guess, is what we're getting.
An eye for an eye. There you go. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
not the word. It's gonna drive me nuts.
But I know it's so
an
hard.
An eye for an eye is a good way to put it.
She's like, not the word. She's getting so frustrated, looking at me like that's not it. Right? But yes, you know, it's these. I lost my train of thought right there. What were you just saying? What were subject were we just on?
The last thing we left off of was revenge.
Yeah. Well, and people will, people will manifest these different aspects of themselves when they try to separate themselves from other people by creating a term evil, like evil,
right? There
or
you
like
go.
a concept of evil. You actually create those things in those people. You manifest them. You'll make them act in those ways because you've already decided what they are. Mm-hmm. You know what they are. There's no convincing necessary, and so you've taken a certain amount of control. The way you can test this inside of yourself, and why most of the time you'll trick yourself out of ever seeing that you have these kind of feelings for people. Usually the further away from these experiences you get, the less you remember them because you try to forget them. You know what I mean? People that you've cussed at, made hurt, whatever, said, left in a weird way, bridges burned. Think of one of them, just one of them throughout your life. And then try to imagine thinking about them not being wrong. Just for a second. Mm-hmm. And then carry that forward to the next person and the next person and the next person. And then after you get through everybody you can think about, then carry it forward to the first person that scares you outside of your circle. And then further and further and further. And then take it to the most scary person you can imagine. And you'll realize it's all the same thing. Mm-hmm. But you'll realize you don't want to see it. You'll probably get to a point and you'll be like, no, not that one. not willing to budge on that one. And there's something about that person that you need to focus on. There's something about that person that resonates in you that you are really terrified of. That's where the dragon resides, one of them at least. You know what I mean? And so in a weird way, you track your fear. That's how you're guided. You have to be comfortable with fear. You have to be comfortable with uncomfortability. You don't want comfort. You don't want the stability that you try to plan into your life, the thing that the career is supposed to give you. You don't want it. Not in the way we conceptualize it, because it's a certain type of stability that will keep you comfortable in a way that will stop you from actually having these questions manifest in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly believe this is one of the reasons why in the story of the Buddha, as a prince, he relinquished all of his, earthly possessions and went and lived as a pig, tended the pigs for years and years to try to demonstrate this aspect to himself. That there is no necessity to the things you surround yourself with. There's no fulfilling yourself with those things. The best people to listen to and to talk about this are people that have all those things. People like Jim Carrey, like we were watching a show the other night that referred to him. People that talk about how celebrity and fame and money isn't the solution, they're more right than you know. Because think about it. If you had all of those things and you still weren't fulfilled, what does that mean?
Without love.
You know what I mean? What does that mean? Everything you're working for, everything, all the stability, all the comfort that you think is going to sustain you, won't. Ever. No matter how hard you try, no matter how hard you wish. You're actually selling yourself to the devil you're creating. In a weird way.
Unless the work that you're doing to obtain those things is something you enjoy, I think.
Yes, and I don't mean to villainize career in general. I need a good point. I'm not trying to villainize work or career. There's a distinction here I'm trying to make.
Working without enjoyment.
Yes, working to work.
Yeah.
Working for the idea of needing to be that role, needing to be a worker, needing to, needing
to get a house, to have a car,
yes.
to have all of these, not just material things, but even the stepping stones that people think that they have to go to in society, assuming that it's not necessary. There are people who can love those things. There are people who I think are just genuinely made to like flashy, shiny things and objects, and that's okay. But people who are using their life to work away everything, all of their time, their energy, their thoughts, all of it, just so that they can obtain a status or a title or an image that show like through the things that they have is still without love, because you actually resent it. Yeah. You resent it because, I worked my life away. I did not enjoy the work I did. Now I have all of these things. Now what do I do? Exactly
right. And that's a hard place to be. And it's a place that will demand the same questions that we've been going over. You can either take your this is a weird way to think about it. You can take your whippings now or later. You get to choose.
I was going to say, then it makes it difficult to love yourself when you get to that point, because then you're like, oh shit, what did I just do? I can't go back. I lost all that time.
It's another layer. Exactly. And so there is a way in which you have to place it in the proper context. Don't demotivate yourself from achieving whatever your dream is. I'm not saying to not work for what you believe in, but I am saying make sure it's what you believe in.
Yeah, exactly.
That is exactly what you need to do, is figure out what you believe in.
So I did a reading for a girl one time where she was asking about 2 different career paths. She wanted to do like a more medical field. The other thing was like a more artistic thing. And I told her either one of them works. I said, you will find happiness in both of them. Yes. But you have to sacrifice something, and you need to decide what's more important to you, the sacrifice or the happiness. Like, yes. What level of happiness are you going to obtain? She understood that she may have to give up a relationship with her current partner to be able to do the medical stuff. Yeah. And we read that if she chose to do the more artistic stuff, she wouldn't probably make less money initially. Yeah. But she would have a partner who would support her and encourage her, and with that, they would be able to kind of like accumulate things together, build, and in time that would grow. It wouldn't be initial, and it would be a lot of work, and there would be a lot of shadow work involved, because when you're kind of stepping out to your creative power, energetically, a lot of different things are coming to and from you.
Makes the best art is that process of releasing the shadow. You'll see it everywhere you look when you look at artists and artwork.
The other side of hers was, if she had done the medical stuff, she would have had to give up the relationship, but her dad would be very proud of her. And that was really important to her because she loved her dad. She admired him. She idolized him. She saw him kind of like as a superhero. Yeah. And she did enjoy, to a degree, the medical stuff, but she was recognizing that there was other things she wanted to do. Maybe not medically involved in the way that he saw for her. Maybe she could find like a more creative way to do medical stuff.
Yeah.
And that was encouraged. So she never told me which one she was going to end up doing.
Damn, the suspense remains. Yeah.
But I do think that she was definitely considering the fact that if she was able to at least give the creative thing a shot, she would know what she did and didn't want.
Yeah.
If the creative thing didn't work, then she could just go back to the medical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that will take some time and she may regret it to an extent, but at least she'll know what she likes and what she doesn't like. And she'll know a little bit more about herself.
If you want to know, and I think this is a good rule of thumb too, if you're in one of those crossroad moments like you're describing that most people we all will come to at some point, it's like, okay, if you have 2 decisions or maybe even 3, what I always have used in those positions is oddly enough the opposite of what you'd think. It's a little bit of reverse psychology on yourself maybe, but it's something like, what are you the most scared of?
Mm-hmm. Probably what you need the most. Yeah.
Yeah. That's almost every time. Actually, every time I've done it, it's the one. It's because, you know what I mean? It's because that is where gardens don't, there's a reason that dragons always guard treasure. There's a reason they're obsessed with gold in our lore and our myth. It's built into every myth we've ever had. You know what I mean? But go to the thing you're afraid of, and that's where you'll find the thing you're looking for every single time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so, yes, you can choose either path. There are no wrong turns in the universe. Nothing that's meant for you will ever pass you by, right? So if you choose one or the other, you're correct.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, but I would say the best way to put it is if you want to there is no finish line in the way that we like to think about it. No choice. One choice is going to bring you to the place you want to be. But that if you want to choose which one will jump further, what are you more scared of? That's how I like to think about it, I guess.
When the boys and I go to jiu-jitsu, I ask them not only, who's in control, and then they have to say their names so that they're identifying, who's actually in control of them. But I tell them to remind themselves that, before I go in, if I make a mistake, I don't fail, I learn. A mistake is not failure.
You should look for them.
Yeah, exactly. You should explore that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to a safe extent, obviously, don't go
don't brutalize yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't make yourself the villain.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you need to recognize that things that you really don't want to be flawless. And you'll see this actually in people that are very talented. This is a good example. That the thing that usually catches people that are very talented is that they don't actively look for their mistakes, so that the people that have done that, worked hard, we were listening to Jocko, have focused on this hard work ethic, they have gotten there looking for their own mistakes. So when they get to you, they can see where it is.
Mm-hmm. You
know what I mean? And so you have to be careful with yourself, especially with the things you're talented in. Don't use them as a crutch ever,
yeah,
because it'll be the thing that will be your downfall. Because once you use it as a crutch, it kind of goes away. Its strength goes away in a certain way. It's not what made you that thing. You know what I mean? The talent isn't what makes you. It's an expression of you. Right?
I think something to point out with the whole, do what you love for your work isn't for an example, I love to paint. I would not enjoy painting as my sole career. Yeah. So it's not unless there was intent behind it. So if I were selling paintings because I knew that in, the gallery or whatever, like a nonprofit thing, then the portions of the profits were going to something that meant something to me, then I would probably push it because there'd be
there's a reason behind it.
A reason and intent behind it. So that's what I wouldn't encourage anybody to just drop their career or anything that they're currently actively doing and be like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to start being a musician and go. And unless you have some kind of intent behind it, because energetically, that's what people are going to feel. That's what they're going to sense. And that's what's going to draw them to whatever it is you're producing. Yeah. So if you're creating a painting just to make money, you're going to resent the painting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but if you're creating the painting or the song because you want to touch somebody, and I don't mean physically, obviously, I mean their heart, their emotions, their thoughts, encourage somebody, a trigger of sorts to
connect with yourself more fully.
Yeah. To help, to reach out to other people, then you're more likely to be able to find enjoyment in the work you're doing. Now, I do think that you can find a career choice where it's not maybe your favorite thing to actually do, but again, that there's a purpose behind it. So you're like, okay, I don't mind doing this work. gardening. I don't mind doing the gardening work. It's not my
Whatever
favorite
it
thing
is.
to do, but it's like I'm gardening for my grandmother, or whatever it is. I'm gardening for something else, and it brings happiness to and for something else.
Yes.
Not just for yourself, but others.
Mm-hmm. Everybody doesn't have to be presidents. Everybody doesn't have to be movie stars. You know what I mean? And they're not supposed to be. Everybody has their role. Everybody has their thing, but not in the way that we think about it. It's not like you own that thing. It's something like when you realize when you realize you're a piece of the whole, you find your place in it.
I don't love to cook, but I love cooking for you because you love my cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Appreciated.
And so there's a way in which it fits in perfectly.
Yeah.
The piece of the whole. Yeah. Okay, yes, let's continue before we get too far along or away from what we were doing before. So we went over the values that we align with, that we resonate with. And I thought it was an interesting conversation that popped out after we did that. So curious to see what we get after this.
So these are the values that we both have, but we may not completely see eye to eye on. So we agree on them, or we understand them, but we don't agree on them.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not certain.
It makes sense, yeah.
Okay. So we have broad-mindedness, and it says tolerant of different ideas and beliefs. And I think that's important to both of us.
It is.
To be broad-mindedness.
Yes.
I'm not certain where the difference is
Me
yet, because I actually thought, I was really surprised by that. I was like, I kind of thought we were on the same page with that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know how to go over that one just yet. Let's see how that comes to me later. I guess broad-mindedness, tolerant of different ideas and beliefs. I can see how it applies, but I still don't see how it's different from the two of us. The other one is authority, and it says the right to lead or command. And I think that has more to do with just who wants to be the leader.
Yes. The tug of war that we tend to play.
It's the power play. Yeah.
It's a power thing. Yeah.
But understanding that we both have that aspect in us, and yes. I think because of that, we've allowed each other at certain times to kind of take the lead in different things. It's not always. It's not like consistent in either one or the other, but I recognize that you need that.
Where our passions manifest, I think, is how to best describe it. It's like it's not really proper to think about what are you best at. It's like, what do you have a passion for?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and in that way you should lead, because that's what's necessary in leadership, is a certain type of passion and vision.
One example that I had is, I was talking about discipline for the kids, and for so far there hasn't been too much discipline on your end because you're trying not to overstep any boundaries and stuff. So the way that I tried to meet in the middle wasn't, I'm in control or give you full authority. It's okay, well, let's discuss together what the discipline should be. So, and then we both agree that this is what we're going to do. And we both are allowing the other person to enact that discipline.
Supporting each other in it, because that's another aspect that is difficult about parenting in general, or leadership in general. Actually, it's a good segue is when you're trying to lead somebody, which is really what you're doing when you're raising a child, is you're leading them into life, right? You can't try to institute yourself on them, right? And you also have to be willing to kind of work with your partner or whoever else you are working with, whoever else you have around you as a support structure, to kind of broaden their perspective, so that it's not proper to think about, discipline and those kind of things, and one person doing the discipline and one person kind of taking care of something else. It's more like we were describing, of understanding what that structure looks like and then supporting each other in it. When, for instance, let's say, we encounter a situation where you say one thing and I say another, right? That a lot of parents get into. Then we know what to go back on, what to fall back on in that situation, and then you don't institute chaos in the environment when it happens. And that kind of stability is the kind of stability that a lot of that allows you to lead your child, together. It really is, I think, crucial in the idea of just marriage in general, right? Partnership in general, especially in the religious background of it. This idea of the person, the mirror, the reflection, but like two parts of a whole coming together, fitting together in the places that they're void, right? Like the one part having the missing piece to the other, and in that completion, kind of giving a more full conception of what the whole human being is to your child, as kind of a archetype, just like we give an archetype in a story of the hero or whatever, but each parent, binary does that for children. And I think, like I said, doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you have to be in a marriage with somebody. It doesn't mean it's just a partner. It's whoever you're working with to raise those children. When you fit together in the proper way, they have a better conception of what the human being is, and then they can enact their version of it inside of themselves. Anyway, that's what sorry.
And no, you don't apologize. Our last card is independence. It's a self-reliant and self-sufficient. And I think we both agree on this in many ways. I wouldn't say that you're not independent or that I am more independent, because in many ways I'm not. I mean, the situation I'm in, my living conditions, not to say that they're bad or anything, but I'm definitely not fully independent by anybody else's, outside perspective. Exactly. Yeah. Right. But to a degree, I do have a sort of independence where I feel like I'm not always, after a lot of shadow work, as easily influenced by ideas and things.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing that I considered was, I still do think this applies, is I had said that an ideal relationship is somebody who does what they want and I still do what I want, but when we're together, that's when we focus on each other.
Yeah.
And in a way we're doing that. But I also understand that while you appreciate independence and identity independence, you like to spend more time with your partner.
Yeah.
And so that's where I see where we have the same
Conception
value,
in a way, yeah.
but we interpret the value slightly differently.
Yeah.
But I still am trying to meet in the middle where it's like, okay, we can still do our different things and our identity, but we can still also spend a lot of time together.
Yeah.
And let's just figure out how to do that where it's in a balanced, alternating schedule type way.
Yeah. Like what do you need? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, and I think because it's not going to ever be your conception of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's the other aspect of relationships, friendships, whatever, that's really hard to manage, is that there's a certain amount of compromise that's necessary. And if you don't compromise in those ways, then you deny yourself the kind of the thing you're looking for, you know, you run away from it. But yes, you spoke, I think it speaks somewhat of love languages, like we've talked about before. Kind of the way in which you express your love and the way you receive love is very important too. I do have I've never read anything on the love languages. I think that just like anything else, but I have a conception of it. I've read kind of tertiary things on. Do
you know what they are?
I don't know all of them. I don't know them by heart, I guess is what I would say. But
I guess remember them either.
The interpretation I would have of it is that it is a part of the experience of being with somebody else, is how you express yourself and how you interpret it. And also it's easy to get caught in that as a conception of trying to look for somebody that has your love language or vice versa, that is the perfect, and you got to be careful with that too. A
love language is your love value, the way you value love.
These in a love sense, yes.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
so yeah, exactly. So exactly what we're doing here makes sense in that context. What are your values and how do you receive those in the physical sense? Anyway, I agree. I think that there's ways in which, like you were saying, it's hard to identify, as the listeners can probably tell, it's hard to identify in the moment when you're talking about ways in which you don't align, to identify them when you're not in the energy of not aligning. You know what I mean? You can, sometimes if you want to probably hold on to the residual energy of a past argument or something and bring it up in the future. But if you live in the moment, it really is hard to identify where you're not resonating when you're focusing on the proper aspects of your partner and your friend and whoever it is you're in your life. They're you.
Prioritizing values is really important too. I could say that I value one aspect of you, and then maybe there's another aspect that is not my most favorite, right? And then I would have to weigh it out and say, okay, well, I may not like this, but if I decide that this one thing is gonna break it, then I'm giving up A, B, and C. And A, B, and C, I may have never found in anybody else. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to give that up because the odds of me being able to find those values in another person are very slim.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take what I can get, but appreciate what I have and let go of control on some other things, because you might find out that the values that you currently have could actually change.
Perfect doesn't exist in the way we think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you want to move on to a page or two out of the Big Love Book?
Is that what you want to do first? Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking so. You want to do that?
We're just gonna. So the book is called Big Love. It says The Power of Living with a Wide Open Heart. It is by Scott Stable.
And we haven't really I mean, she's been reading this book for a little bit, but we haven't been planning this beforehand. We're just going to turn to a page and intuitively be guided, right?
I read one chapter of the book and thought that there were so many things in it that resonated with you and all the things we were talking about that I was like, no, I got to wait so we can read this together. So I actually haven't read the entire thing, but within the first chapter, I found so much wonderful information. So I was thinking I would actually try to randomly open up to a page that's hopefully outside of the first chapter so we can...
Yes, for that reason. Yeah.
We can see if it applies to anything we've been talking about.
Cool.
That's usually how divination works.
909 right now.
909. I was just going to ask you if it was an angel number. That's exactly why I looked over. All right, let's see what we get.
Let's see what we get.
Oh, so we opened up to page 151.
So angel number 151 as well.
Yep. Okay, well, actually...
Good luck.
Yeah.
A sign that you and your partner will succeed and create a powerful bond.
Aw, that's good.
Reading out a big love. Look at that, guys.
Was that 151 or 909?
That's 909.
Oh, I wonder what 151 is.
That wasn't even a love one. That was just a general 909 one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, babe.
Okay, so I'm going to start from the middle of this page just because the top of it is starting on 150. So we're going to go from here. It says, that's how kindness rolls. It says, when I consider the many mandates of love, kindness stands out as the easiest. We all know how to be kind, and we have all experienced the benefits of another person's kindness. We are given opportunities to exercise our kindness constantly, through a smile, a greeting, a compliment, a phone call, encouragement, the benefit of the doubt. Every interaction with another person is an invitation to practice kindness, and every time we act with kindness, we serve everyone involved, including ourselves. Like everything else rooted in love, kindness feels as good to give as it does to receive, maybe even better. We know that our actions affect others, but we can't really know to what extent our kindness, or lack thereof, ultimately impacts someone's life. That's just one reason to make kindness our default. When in doubt, be kind. You want me to continue?
I like that. I think we're good with that right there because I had some ideas going through my head as you were saying that. It reminded me actually of earlier today. We were driving and we were coming out of a gas station and we ran into somebody that was asking for change.
That's right.
Right. And, many people, I'm sure everybody at some 9/11 when I say this, everybody I'm sure has encountered, somebody that's in need of in some way.
911.
And yeah, exactly. 911. And you have an option. Every time you get, that's a little mini crossroads moment you have when you get there. It's like, okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to give? Or are you going to ignore? Right? Are you going to demonstrate kindness? Are you going to show that kind of kindness and receive in the way that they're talking about? Receive that kindness back immediately. You know what I mean? Or are you going to reserve it for yourself in a certain type of safety and security that you want to hold? And I think what it demonstrated today was a man that was asking for 25 cents that I didn't readily have on me in my pocket when he asked for it, right?
But we went out of our way to look for it.
As I was walking away, I was like, but I have it in my car. And I remember asking Bethany, like, do you have any change? And then I remember looking in my car and finding 25 cents and running back up to him and giving it to him. And, as you hand, I always remember, like, as you go and do those actions, do I know what he's going to do with 25 cents? No. But do I need to know that? No. Because the action itself is justified in itself, right? The giving act, the act of giving is a form of kindness, a fundamental truth that when demonstrated is immediately manifested in your life. It's a form of magic in the way I was talking about it before. That immediately I got this wave, this rush of refreshment, I guess is the best way to describe it, of kindness back, but in a very subtle form. Something like the universe writing itself in a very, very subtle way in your world, right? That there's you have the ability to reduce the suffering in the world in other people. Doesn't mean you can eliminate it. And you have to be very careful with that. You cannot eliminate suffering. It's also fundamental, just like kindness. But you can do your part in those at times. You have those options, those crossroad moments, the option to help somebody else in need. You can act in kindness in that moment, and you can receive in the way that I was just describing.
Who sings that song, What It's Like?
Love it. No, it's What I Got. That's what I was
No, yeah. We've all seen the man at the liquor store begging for your change.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Yes, I love that song so much.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think most of the listeners know that song too.
Probably. If not, go look it up. I keep wanting to say Everlast, but I don't think it's Everlast.
It is Everlast.
Is it?
Yeah, it's Everlast.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yeah, it's Everlast.
You should look it up. Well, it says, it describes him as being dirty, right? And then it says the hair on his face is dirty, dreadlocked, and full of mange. And then it goes to like talk about like the shame in his eyes. And I thought about how vulnerable you have to be to ask another human being for something like a cup of water.
Yeah. How
and
difficult that is, actually.
Yeah. To be, it's super vulnerable. And to be denied that would be very painful.
What it's like.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's what I said. And then to have the few people who are willing to actually go out of their way. And like I said, you didn't just pull a quarter out of your pocket and say, here you go, and walk away. You said, no, I don't have a quarter. And then you proceeded to look in your car and say, hold on, I might have a quarter. And then you found a quarter and then you gave it to him. Yeah. And you weren't rude. You weren't judgmental. You didn't, stop to have a full conversation with him or anything, but you were polite and genuine and then carried on about your day. But then we had the conversation where I shared my story with you about how the reason, not the reason, but one of the main reasons why I started giving money, or not just money, but food to people who are in situations like that was because I understood what it's like. Yeah. And that was exactly it, is when the person had initially asked me, I told myself, no, I only have a little bit of money. I can't give them what I have. This is all I have.
There's a bunch of logical excuses to not do it.
And then I thought about it and I'm like, well, I've had less money than this. And he has less than I have. He doesn't have a home. He doesn't have a car. He doesn't have any of these things. And yeah, he may have put himself in that position, but we don't know. And I don't want to know. Yeah. But I could give him a little bit of kindness, which might motivate him or encourage him to do better for himself, or maybe be kind to somebody else who might then turn around and, help him in another way. You never know how that's going to work. But I came back to him and I gave him a little bit of money. And when like I said, when he asked me, why did you do this? I said, because I know what it's like. And so that song is very plagued. So thinking about self-love, I love myself enough to know that it's okay for me to share what little I have with another person, because I will find my own way. Yeah. Even if I give up $5 out of the $10 that I have right now, I will feel good. I'll feel good about it. I'll hope the best for that person. And then because I feel good about myself, I'll look for better things for myself. Yeah, no, exactly right. I now need to replace that $5 that I just lost. So it's going to motivate me to do something different.
But it comes back to you in the same way. Yeah. And that's the other interesting thing about it. The law of karma comes into play in that moment, those moments. And that if you have faith and trust, like the reason when you were talking about that, I was thinking of another situation in which, multiple times where I've been in those kind of, situations where you have money, but maybe not a lot, and you've been working hard for it or something like that. And somebody asks you for change, and you can always have that excuse or whatever logical excuse it is in your head. Like, I don't have enough right now and I really need this and I have this or that or this or that. Mm-hmm. But then if you take a second, you stop that logical process and you say like, well, hey, wait, if I do give that small amount away, am I still going to be able to survive? And the question almost always will be yes.
Not only that, but what makes me more important than the other person?
Exactly right. And why is that person asking me for this right now? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Does it mean that I don't need it as much as they do right now?
Yeah.
Right. And am I so attached to that dollar bill, that piece of paper, that representation, that intermediary, that I'm willing to make another person suffer needlessly, add on to the suffering, like I said, instead of try to take a little bit away from it? You know what I mean?
Those toilet paper thieves. Toilet paper thieves. Everybody who goes around stealing all the toilet paper because they think that their butts need to be wiped more than everybody else's.
I went on a whole rant right at the beginning of the coronavirus when that was happening, when people were going and buying up all the toilet paper. On exactly that, on the trivial nature of it, on how ridiculous it is, and how disconnected from our fundamental selves we are when we think that the thing that we need more readily than anything else is a comfort item like wiping our butt.
They went and spent, I'm assuming, a certain amount of money, okay, when most people were no longer allowed to work. We didn't know for sure if we were going to get pandemic money. Yeah. So they took a big chance and just spent what they had on toilet paper. Thinking that everybody else was going to beat them to the punch. Apparently they really needed to wipe.
Literally flushing money down the toilet.
Literally flushing money down the toilet. Yes. And
that's why life's a comedy, folks. Right?
Yep. I'm sorry.
Because we act in such funny ways when we're in our ego.
It's a fear thing
as well. It's a fear thing. Yeah, it is. It's a fear-based thing. There's a lot of aspects that came into play during the coronavirus. And that's why it's so unique. This time, we are being asked, called, presented with an option up or down, left or right. It's just always the same option, but it's something like, what do you want? You get what you want. Everything that you think is real is. Right? That's really how it works.
Because it's how you see it.
It's really how it works. It's like if you believe that the Starship Enterprise is real, it is. It really is. If it in the way that you're thinking too, and that's the thing that's I think a conception that's really hard to understand because it doesn't manifest in our direct world in the way we think about it. But similar to the show that we were watching the other night, we were watching a show on aliens and kind of telepathy and all these different really interesting subjects. And one of the things that they were talking about is how you can connect to these other entities and energies because they are all part of the same thing, the universe. This is a network just like the internet. So that if I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about the Starship Enterprise and Captain Kirk, guess what? I'm connecting with them.
Yeah.
Just in the same way I was talking about Einstein, just in the same way I was talking about Tesla. They're all here. Everything is here. There's no the illusion is because we're fit into a finite space. Time exists. Everything is linear, logical, and we are the only thing that is.
That's kind of how mediumship works.
Fundamental lie. Exactly right.
When you're talking to somebody who's deceased, passed away, it's because you understand they still exist.
Yes, exactly.
Even though they're not in the physical world, they're not in the material world anymore. You can't, walk up to them and hug them anymore. Yeah. Just like that starship you're talking about. We only see it in the TV, but it exists. You can walk up to a ton of people and be like, oh, the Enterprise? They'll be like, oh, yeah, I know the Enterprise.
It exists.
It exists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. It is more real than the TV show itself.
Yeah.
In a weird way, but we look for it in the wrong ways. And it's why I've always referred to or have been referring to technology as the bootloader for real life, for the future. That what we've seen in sci-fi, in Star Wars, all of that. Star Wars is another good example. The Force is real. It is this network. It is what we're talking about. It is manifestation. It is magic. It is all the same thing. It's why all of those fundamental values, the morals, these fundamental ideas, archetypes of sorts, in an idea form, resonate and exist with every single religion, every single spiritual practice, every single fundamental grouping of thought, period, in the universe that we know of, period. It doesn't matter if it's a corporation, if it's a political party, if it's an organization. It doesn't matter. These concepts will manifest in a mirror form in those organizations, no matter what, because they're existing within it. They can't escape those laws.
Can we look up 151?
Yes.
And then kind of proceed with the other cards and stuff too?
Yes. No, do that part. Let me get the 151. I had it already pulled up.
151.
Let's see. So I did love on 151. And it says, when it comes to love, the angel number 151 is usually a good sign. It announces manifesting your desired relationship into reality. The angels in the universe have heard your prayers and are in the process of aligning you with the partner who is a vibrational match to who you've become.
A vibrational match to who you become. That's so cool. That's a wonderful way of putting what I was trying to say earlier.
It is 922 when we say that. So we're just there's a way in which this streams literally, and I'm not joking. I'm not sitting here watching the clock. That's the next time I looked at the clock, it was 922.
Yeah.
Right. So these are the ways in which you're guided, and there's a whole conversation constantly going that you will completely miss if you're not watching.
Number 9 has to do with like the ending of something before a new cycle begins, and 22 would be the master builder, and or number 4, which is a foundation. So building blocks of sorts.
922 angel number represents love, kindness, clarity, power, and strength, a beautiful combination. The guardian angels are always watching over you, and every time you need guidance and help, they are communicating with you through signs and symbols. Open your heart and accept these messages. They're just clarifying what we're saying.
Like literally what you just said, yeah.
So this is like I said, there's not a way in which I can give you the vindication of these things, of this world, of all of these gifts, these powers, whatever you want to describe it. I can't give you the vindication you're looking for because it's not mine to give. It's something like you have to see it yourself. In the same way, if you've ever had a kid and you've tried to teach them a lesson that they refuse to accept, they have to learn it themselves. It's the exact same process. It has to be manifest in their reality. And it usually already is. All you have to do is look. So I think it is smart to move on to a couple of these Our Moments cards. I'm kind of excited to do these if you're good for that. So I'm going to pull them similar to how we pull tarot cards randomly. And I'm thinking we can do 2 or 3 of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
We won't do the whole deck. That would take all night. But I am enjoying this episode thoroughly. And we've got a good amount down already. So
this was a wonderful bonding experience for us, I think.
Exactly right. That's the other aspect I feel, yes, of podcasting, of this long-form conversation, of this philosophical thought, of this in-depth kind of exploration, spiritual tools, all of this, when you use them together, what it'll do is exactly what she just said. It'll bring you closer to the people that you love. That's everybody, if you really are honest with yourself. You know what I mean? That's everybody. So let's go ahead and find a card. Okay, so the first card is, drumroll, what are you bored of?
Just in general?
It just says, what are you bored of?
What am I bored of? Television.
In context of the relationship.
Okay,
with some context in this, guys. I'm kind of a TV. I'm obviously, as anybody that's listened knows, that I am an addict in general. But one of those ways that manifests is with TV and television and technology and all this stuff. And so I've been addicted to the television form for quite a while. I love movies, and there is a positive aspect to that as well, but also a shadow form of that, like everything else. And one of the ways it manifests in our relationship is I like to kind of watch movies perpetually. And even though I do enjoy that, I do take it to an unhealthy degree. And I think that's what Bethany was talking about when she was saying that she was bored.
I can go, I can like binge watch a show and watch it for hours or days or whatever. I can get into modes where I watch quite a bit of television. But I feel and think that usually when I'm doing that, it's because I'm looking for synchronicity or information or just that, I burnt myself out and I need something else to keep myself preoccupied while I'm just trying to rest. As long as it's not something that's like overstimulating, scary, like not that I don't like scary stuff, but like overstimulating, something that's going to put me in a funk.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point.
You can use television with positive intent.
Yes. We've talked about this before too, that technology is kind of the mirror itself. That, if you think technology isn't alive, that you're wrong. That it is alive in a different way than we think about living. Mm-hmm. But it also is a mirror. It is the mirror, the most fundamental one we've ever made. So that if you go and ingest something, you have unlimited possibility on the internet. So you can go turn on the TV and choose whatever you want to watch, right? And the problem is we've kind of protected ourselves or compartmentalized the idea of energy itself to where we don't like to think about that affecting us in any way. So if you go and perpetually watch Forensic Files, you're not going to somehow have nightmares about being murdered. Or if you go, you know what I mean? Like it's this idea of I'm protected from that. And then people actually believe it so much that when those things actually manifest, they have nightmares, they have whatever else, it gets in between the relationships, whatever it is. They're like, no, it's not that. It couldn't be the TV. You know what I mean? That can't hurt me. But they can. And it's not that it's hurting you in the way you think you're hurting yourself. So the way that you were describing it, you can use it properly. It's intention setting, just like we did before we started this podcast. This is a technology. Everything we're using around us is technology based. I'm looking at the internet as we're doing this. But if I set the intention before that, hey, I'm using this medium, I'm using these tools in the way that they're meant to be used for the highest version energy that we can manifest right now, then that's what I'll get. But if I go into it and I say, I don't set that intention, and then I'm just let whatever I want manifest, what you'll notice is you'll go for the things usually that you're hiding from in weird ways. You'll ingest shit that'll scare the shit out of you because it's the thing that you need, oddly enough. But it's also something like an infection of sorts that you'll have to know how to release. And so
now, I do think that even like quote unquote negative energy, things that are emitting a negative energy, can still be used in a positive intent if you're thinking about it very carefully,
like in that way.
And you're guarding yourself. Like for example, let's say I wanted to pick 3 different scary movies. One's more like gory. Yeah. It's a gory movie, so it's more action based, right? And the other one's more, I don't know, I mean, Saw's still gory, but like strategic. Like, what would you do? Like choice based. What's scarier, this or this kind of a thing. So it's more mental based. Like you watch a couple different
thriller kind of
versions of what's scary, with the intent of asking yourself something along the lines of, well, where are my boundaries? Where do I draw the line at scary? What truly scares me? Would I be able to think my way out of that situation? Like, so to kind of like test yourself, get to know yourself better.
You're right. Well, in the way that they were talking about today in the podcast we were listening to, similar concept that, sorry to segue that way, but yes.
No, that's okay. And then like, on the opposite end, you can get too familiar with it. Like, for example, when I started watching Dexter, I remember being like, oh my goodness, like I really resonate with this guy. I'm like crazy and being terrified of that. But it taught me something about myself.
Yes.
And it actually triggered it. It got me to ask myself, am I crazy? Is there something wrong with me? What is crazy? What is wrong with me?
Set you down the rabbit hole.
Yes, exactly. Down the rabbit hole. So I started having to explore all of that in myself. Why do I feel this relation to him? Is it because he's bad or evil, or is there something behind his actions that I see? Does he have values but go about them in a different way than I do?
It's still intention setting, right? It's like if you know what you're doing and that's what you're using it for, then that's what you'll get, and you'll know what, as you're going through it, that you're safe in that way because you know what intention you have going through it. But if you don't use it in that way, then you'll get lost in the mirror. You get lost down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then once you're in that rabbit hole, once you're in that dream, you won't know you're there. You won't know you went down it. You know what I mean? And so it is tricky. Anyway, I don't want to get too caught on the one card. Do you want to pull one now?
Sure. Yeah.
These are interesting.
Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. What's your idea of the perfect date?
Oh, that's a fun one.
Yeah.
It's a really fun one. Nice. Okay. Well, I think the perfect date is, for me, is an experience that kind of expresses in a physical way the way I feel. You know what I mean? So that it's not really about what we do or where we go, but more of the energy that we're in while we do that. There's a weird way in which the perfect date for me is honestly letting the day unfold. So it's something like letting the universe take the wheel. And that there's no specific place that I could think of if I tried to that would be the perfect place to take you. There's no specific spot in which I would say this is perfect, unless the energy aligned properly, the moment was right, and I felt like I wasn't in time, I was just in the happening.
Quality time.
Yeah. So
That's
I guess
that's
it's a really good way to sum up like a 2.5 minute segment there. Yeah.
No, it's an actual love language.
Yeah.
Quality time. Yeah.
Quality time. So yeah, I guess that would be the best way to put it. Is my perfect date would be spending quality time with you.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'd have to agree. That would be my answer too. Ditto.
Ditto. Okay. All right. And next, are we going on next? Move, right?
Yeah.
To the next one, or are we doing? Okay. Move, right? That was a weird way to put it.
Card. Pull.
Pull card. All right. If you could choose your own life obstacles, would you keep the ones you have? That's a really good question. I like that question.
When I am thinking emotionally and out of balance, I tend to think that I'd give it all away because I consider my curse. I consider my blessing a curse.
Yeah.
When it's hard, when it's an obstacle. But when I overcome the obstacle and I realize how much I've actually gone through, which is an insane amount of things, honestly, and not to say that I have had it harder than anybody else, but in an accumulative sense, I've had a lot of stuff.
It's never stunning. It never ceases to amaze me the ways in which people suffer. I think is the best way to put it. The myriad of ways. Everybody suffers their own way.
But it made me the intelligent, strong, caring, compassionate person that I am today.
Exactly.
And it's taught me a lot. And with all of that suffering, all of those obstacles, I've been able to connect with other people who feel like they're alone. And in my mindset is, if I can do it, you can do it. And I try to be that example for them. Like, look, there was a time where I felt and thought and behaved exactly as you do. And my life mirrored yours. All of my friends and family mirrored yours. And not to say that I'm better than you, but because I was you, that means if you are me and I am you, that if I can work through this and find my way, that you can
exactly
as well.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you see that in everybody around you, you know, in different ways, in different aspects, you know, and you'll see it in yourself, in other people, and vice versa, in an opposite way.
It makes it easier to let go of expectations and like how much of a time frame somebody needs to work on on themselves. I mean, it makes it easier to let somebody be themselves and kind of love them for the incomplete person that they are in that moment.
Because we're always incomplete, and we all are.
Yeah, consistently.
separated from each other.
Mm-hmm.
The only perfection is that combination. Total love.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one more.
Yeah,
That's the best way to put it.
My turn to pull
that's
one, though.
exactly how I would have answered that too. So
ditto.
I like that. Ditto.
Would you rather have an extra $500 a month or an extra 2 hours a day? I love these cards because they're not like they're for couples, but it's not like specific to like like
it isn't.
the relationship.
But it is things that are revealing about the person, the people in the relationship.
A value. What's more valuable to you? Yeah.
That's an easy one for me. Time. Not it's not as easy, I guess, as I just said.
What would you do with those 2 extra hours a day?
That's it. I think it would be centered around quality time. In a similar aspect, the question I just did.
So you can use the other time to make the $500.
Sure. Well, maybe I'm just trading away, doing the exact same thing in a more tertiary way, right?
I don't know.
Anyway, no, I don't value money in that way. I know that sounds kind of cliche to say, but I really have never felt connected in money in that way. I've never felt like it has any value because I feel like the fundamental way I see it is as an intermediary, as something we've created, as something that's not real. See it as an illusion. So
yeah,
I would never choose it in that way.
I see time as an illusion though as well.
It is. They both are illusions. That's why it's once I said that, I was like, oh, because time's also
because I want to debate. There's so many things I want to go on with that. I would have given the same answer that you gave. I feel I would have chosen that as well. But then I'm like, wow, what about time?
It's harder. Yeah. Because neither of them really exist.
Right.
So I guess if you're offered a choice, choose either. Because it's you need money in a certain way. You need money in the world we live in. In a certain way. So it's not like you should punish yourself or deprive yourself of a certain resource that you may find necessary at the moment, but you have to be very careful about being attached to it in a way where you'd always choose it, I think. Anyway.
A third card?
Yes. We'll do 3.
Correct.
Okay. And the third card. What do you most look forward to about getting old? That's a good question, too.
Being able to share my experiences, because that's something I already do, but I feel like a lot of people don't initially take you seriously or take me seriously because I am young and then I look even younger than I am. So people just assume that I couldn't know or understand very much. Yeah. But when you're older, people tend to look to you for advice, and I actually even kind of like that idea of physically aging because I think the way that I look when I'm older says a lot about how well I took care of myself. And I don't mean just physically, I mean energetically, mentally.
Because a lot of that has to do with how you look physically too. Mm-hmm. They're all interconnected in that way. Yeah, I agree. Also, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I just want to put one thing. Yeah. I got one of my gray hairs, like one of my first gray hairs. Did you? Yeah. And it was silver. Yeah. So I'm so stoked because I want silver hair.
It'd be pretty dope, or a silver streak, right? Yeah, it'd be so cool.
That's what I'm looking forward to. My silver hair.
I like that. Those are good answers. I think I look forward to it in a similar way, like the way you described it, wisdom. The wisdom that comes with age, but not necessarily just the wisdom. I look forward to the way in which that growing age and kind of disparity between the way I feel internally and the way my avatar looks will demonstrate to me what I really am more fully, if that makes sense. Something like as you get more disconnected as you age, as you don't feel the way you or look the way you feel, it defines more fully what you are. Mm-hmm. If you're willing to look at it that way. If you don't look at the avatar as what you are, then you realize, oh, I get an opportunity to actually connect with myself more fully. And I think that's what I look forward to in old age. And I actually deeply look forward to sharing that with you. So I love you too. All right. And was that, you have 3?
One more.
Okay.
One more card for me to pull for you. It was hard to say. Okay, I didn't pull this, but I looked down and this was the card.
I flipped the deck over right here.
And pulled it too? Yeah.
I didn't look at it, but somebody told me we were supposed to use that one. So.
Oh, I just looked down and read it. So we're going to do this one, and I think it's fitting.
Okay.
I think it's fitting. I know it's fitting. I don't think it. It says, if you dropped everything and went on a road trip, where would you go?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is
very fitting.
If I dropped everything and went on a road trip, where would I go? I know. I think I know. The first thing that popped in my head was Alaska.
Okay.
And I think it's because I do see Alaska as kind of a symbol in some ways of the unconquered wilderness, of kind of the unadulterated world itself, in as much as you can find it. And the natural kind of balance of nature itself. There's a certain amount of isolation that entails. And I think it's an isolation that is only beneficial in small doses, for me at least. So that if I was going to take a road trip somewhere, and I wanted to go experience that isolation and kind of that freedom, but also that kind of introspection that isolation demands, I'd want to do it in a period of time where I could come back and not be there forever. Because there's a lot of things about this world that I appreciate, the world that we do live in. And I find myself oftentimes villainizing the world itself, making a villain or an evil entity out of technology, out of the media, out of politicians, out of the government, out of corporations, out of our economy, basically everything. But that when I stop and think for 1 second about everything that I do have, I realize that there may be a day that I don't have these things, and I don't have the convenience that all of these evil entities that, as I just described them, provide, so that it is necessary to experience both, to value both, to live more fully. And so if I was going to that's a very deep answer for where would you go on a road trip, but that's where I would go. Alaska.
Can I answer?
Yes, please.
Because I put some thought into this.
Okay. I like it.
I have, it's like a dual answer.
Okay.
And it's more for an experience. Well, for an experience. And hear me out on this, okay, before you think I'm totally weird.
Okay.
But one of the things was actually kind of along the lines of something we were talking about earlier. We were discussing going to different, like spiritual places, churches, temples, stuff like that. Yeah. So I think it would be really cool to explore that in different states as well. And kind of understand not just like the culture of that area, but like the spiritual culture of that, and how diverse it can and cannot be.
The energy of the area. And
then on the opposite end, because I'm weird, because I'm a weirdo.
As am I.
I would want to go to as many, what do you call them? Like haunted attractions. Oh my God. And like do kind of do it at the same time, you know?
Yes. Well, your answer's so much better than mine. Why didn't I say that? Can I take mine back and take yours instead?
Ditto.
Okay, we can do that then.
Ditto.
Because I really like that idea, and I've always been fascinated with that world as well. It all connects. They're not separate. When you think about ghosts and those kind of things, it's not a different thing than aliens. It's not a different thing than angels. It's not a different, you know what I mean? It's all part of the same thing. It's not a different thing than humans, actually, honestly. Yeah. Just degrees of perspective. You know, and so, I'd love to explore those places, those areas, because, like you said, like we were saying, like we were talking about earlier, evil itself, that kind of darkness, the fear that you have, you create it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And one of the ways you can demonstrate that to yourself, while I would say with a word of caution, is through engaging with the things that scare you. So. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would be a very, very valuable experience, and also a really enjoyable one, because it's something like an eye-opening experience for the diversity of the places and the people that have gone before us, what their experience has been.
Engaging doesn't necessarily mean practicing either. You can engage with something without actually practicing it and taking in all of its beliefs, and like the idea of going to the different temples and churches. I want to go to learn, and I guess to some extent I'm participating, but that doesn't mean that I'm taking on every belief. Doesn't mean I'm going to continue to do it every single time. It's just more knowledge based.
Exactly. No, I like that perspective.
Engaging, but
yeah, exactly. It's an experience. It's all about the adventure, always. And in that adventure, when you live it that way, when you allow a little bit of freedom, when you let go of the wheel, then you'll be taken to where you need to be every time. You know. And I love your answer. That'd be so exciting. We need to plan that like right away.
I think we should.
So anyway, do you have anything else that is popping in your mind, or anything you'd like to talk about before we get out of here?
Nothing more that I want to talk about. Just want to say that I love you with all of my heart.
I do too.
And my soul and my mind. And I'm so very grateful for you and for you bringing me onto your podcast and sharing this with me. Well, and I mean that. I'm not just being cheesy.
No, I know.
That.
No, and I want to say the same thing, that I love you more than I've ever experienced or thought I could experience. And that's why I love having this be the subject of our first podcast together, is because you've shown me what true love is. And I can't wait to experience it more fully with you. And one of the ways in which we can do that is in this form, in the way that we just did. And so I'm really excited not only to explore this more with you, but also all the other things that we've been talking about doing together, that I do hope to share with all of you listening at some point, but that me and Bethany have a lot of big ideas that we're working on and a lot of things we want to share with you all. And that I hope that you tune in and you listen and you engage, because we really are chomping at the bit to get out in the world and to experience you. So with that, I think I'm going to leave it there, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have almost 2 hours and 22 minutes. 222. We have 2 hours and 22 minutes that we were at right there. When I said that, I think almost when we'll finish, we'll be at 222. So thank you for tuning in. That's also adds to the number 6. That's the number of partnership and loyalty, right?
Domestic love.
Is domestic love, but 6 is about
love.
Partnership, relationships, and love. So
thank you for being you. Sorry I cut you off.
No, you're good. Thank you for being you.
Yep.
And with that, folks, that's the Unfounded Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful week, day, night, whenever you're listening to this. And I will be back at it very soon. I know there's been a lot of delays up until this point, but it has been because partially what we have talked about in these last 2.5 hours with you. And I hope that helps broaden your perspective. I hope that you take something from this experience. And I hope you know that we both love you very, very much. And I'll be back on here very soon with more people to talk, more perspective to share. And that's all I have tonight, folks. Thank you very much. Lots of love. Bye-bye.